It's on here. Okay, we have a quorum, so we're going to get started. If I could have roll call, Margaret, please.
Hold on, guys. You got no. Okay, one more video. You'll have.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rary?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
And let the record reflect that Mayor Bryan is absent.
So before we move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd just like to make a quick announcement that all council members are okay with no one wearing masks, with people in the chamber not wearing masks, because everyone in the chamber currently has been vaccinated. So I just want to make sure that we put that out there and that everybody understands that everyone in the chamber is vaccinated, so we do not have to wear the mask if you choose not to.
I thought we had to have an agreement for that to happen.
My understanding that it was 100% agreement.
Okay. Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I didn't realize I was the only one who hadn't.
Okay, as long as you're okay with it. Okay.
I was just getting
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, yeah, because I was told that we had a 100% agreement, so that's why I made that announcement.
And we've all turned in our vaccination cards?
Has everyone turned theirs in?
I got mine on my phone, so if you want to look at it, but I haven't turned anything in. So if somebody wants to look at it, is that the case?
We should probably all text them to Tim if you have it.
That was my understanding, is because staff needed to do it, that we need to provide it to staff.
Well, like I said, I could text it to you. Okay. Okay, so once again, everybody's been vaccinated in the chamber, so we're going to be able to, if you choose not to wear a mask, that's fine. If you choose to wear one, that's fine as well. But it's also been agreed by all council members currently here, so thank you. If we could all stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could have public comments, Margaret?
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda, items that are listed under informational reports or on the consent calendar, request for future agenda items, new request. Please save your comments for any other items that are on the agenda, including items listed under the future agenda item for that part of the meeting when you'll have the opportunity to provide them. I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda. If appropriate, staff will follow up on them. I currently have 4 hands raised. I'll go ahead and start with Kevin Peltz, followed by Cinziana Todor. Mr. Peltz, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kevin Peltz, and tonight I'm here on behalf of Impact Soccer Club. As you may or may not know, I'd like to mention that we had our 8th annual Boo Fest soccer tournament over the Halloween weekend, and this was by far the most successful Boo Fest tournament to date. Here in Brentwood, games were held at Sunset, Garin Park, and Oak Meadow. We had a record 153 teams compete in the tournament, which is approximately 2,700 players. When you account for family, friends, referees, and coaches attending, conservatively, that is over 8,000 people shopping, eating, and enjoying our city for those 2 days. Teams came from as far as Santa Rosa, Merced, Kings County, Burlingame, Marin, and the Sierra Foothills, to name a few, all needing hotels, which were pretty full for the weekend. I should mention that although we had a record 153 teams, we unfortunately had to turn away approximately 80 teams as we didn't have the field space. Impact is already looking at ways we can have more fields next year to accommodate at least 200 teams. Word has spread in the soccer communities around Northern California that this is a great tournament and Brentwood is a wonderful city. I spoke to a number of families from out of the area that had never been to Brentwood, and they all had great things to say about our city. It was absolutely amazing to see all those people at Sunset. I want to thank the Parks and Rec staff for all their help in putting on this tournament. It was mentioned that the bathrooms at Sunset got more use in those 2 days than they see in an entire month. So that gives you an idea just how many people were at Sunset. It was truly amazing. So in closing, I hope I was able to illustrate how successful and beneficial the tournament was for not only Impact Soccer Club, but also the city of Brentwood. Impact Soccer looks forward to working with the city to make the Boo Fest even bigger and better in the years to come. And who knows, maybe even a spring tournament. We'll see. We'll get to that at some point. But thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Cinziana Todor, followed by Danny Dorman.
Good evening. Thank you, Margaret, so much for allowing me to speak. And next time, my congratulations to Impact Soccer Club for such a successful tournament. It's so great to start a council meeting with an amazing story like that. So I'm looking forward to more. And in that spirit, I would like to mention, and I hope that everyone had the chance to participate in Dias de los Muertos celebration on Brentwood Boulevard. It was a very well organized event, thanks to one of our very dedicated community members, Miguel Saldana, owner of Azucar Dulceria on Brentwood Boulevard. Congratulations to him for a job well done. One of the main sponsors, or maybe the only sponsor for this event, was nonprofit ODAT, whose executive director is our Vice Mayor, Mr. Rodriguez. I could not help to wonder where a nonprofit organization gets the kind of money to sponsor a big event like this with a full stage, lots of seating, and so on. I believe our Vice Mayor would do himself a huge favor to be transparent and file the appropriate paperwork for behested payments, Form 803. There's a lot of information and instructions on the website how to fill that out. And that way, showing where the money sponsoring the event are coming from. And while he's at it, maybe he can complete the 700 form as well, disclosing his income as the executive director of ODAT, and again, bring transparency and show accountability to his constituents. Right now, that form is empty, the one that is accessible to the public. And otherwise, an inquiry to FPPC can clear all this up. Thank you.
The next speaker is Danny Dorman, followed by Ian Cohen.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. For those listening and concerned about identifying yourself in any of our meetings, you can request to speak anonymously. We need your voices. My name is Danny Dorman, and I'm stating my name for the record. The council decided to keep the $250,000 man. This despite numerous complaints and concerns from residents that you are accountable to. So, every meeting I attend from this point forward will have the following declaration. The $250,000 man has shown time and again that he believes to be above the elected officials and citizens of Brentwood. His arrogance includes the creation of a secret society, the decision not to invite members running for office to attend a developer-friendly forum, the forum that demonstrated a money-first mindset. You had the opportunity to remove him. You didn't. There will be a time that the $250,000 man does something again that affects us. When that happens, I will do everything within my power and influence to ensure that any of you running for office in 2022 or 2024 are not elected. And the thing is, I like 4 or 5 of you. 4 out of 5 of you. I respect. I don't know why you five, well, four of you five, decided to keep him on. I really wish you had done the right thing and let this guy go, because he's going to cost us money. I don't claim to be a mind reader or a fortune teller, but he's just demonstrated it's a matter of time. So I'd like to thank you for your time, and let's have fun. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ian Cohen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Council. I just want to first congratulate Impact Soccer Club on their amazing weekend they had. It's so nice to hear that. I want to start this meeting off on a good tone. I just want to thank you all for being an amazing city council this year, even though we may all not agree on everything. And back during the end of October, I just want to say City of Brentwood has been amazing. From the police department to Parks and Rec, everyone in the city has been amazing when helping set up for the crazy events we had over this weekend. We had an amazing hometown Halloween on the Saturday before Halloween. I just want to repeat again, I am so proud of the city, how well we have been able to manage that. We had a whole bunch of people after a year of lockdown come by. I am a youth commissioner for the city, and we have to say we were amazed when we were reflecting upon this on our meeting. So I hope that the city can keep up this great momentum. So now I'm gonna change the topic to my personal views and opinions. So I just want to say, I want the city council to start looking at climate change and how it's affecting the city. I want us to be able to start finding initiatives to fight climate change at a local city level. I have been working on a petition that's nearing 1,900 signatures to ban gas drilling in our county. I just spoke not too long ago at an Antioch City Council meeting with other members of my high school club at Heritage, Project Climate, to ban gas drilling in their city limits. Antioch is taking the next step forward to ban gas drilling. So I hope one day Brentwood can consider banning gas drilling within our city limits and finding other initiatives to help fight climate change. Thank you and have a great evening, City Council.
Thank you. The next speaker is Marisol Velez. Marisol, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to, after those great comments about impact, I wanted to say that I've had the great fortune to be a part of the Brentwood sports clubs. My husband coached both our children at Impact and Pony Baseball. And Brentwood should be extremely proud of these organizations. They build community, and we're really proud to represent Brentwood. One thing, though, that I think you might be talking about later or in the future is fields. And I know it's really difficult for recreational teams to find open fields or parks to accommodate so many of our youth. I would like to ask the City Council to please look at ways to increase our city parks, not grass trails, and finally move forward with the Sand Creek Sports Park. Please take this time to make a real effort to look at how parks can help our city, these organizations, and build additional parks and turf fields. I know that Impact has been asking for years and years for this, and nothing has happened. So I'd like to please ask the City Council if they can finally say yes to parks, to turf fields, and take a real good look at that Sand Creek Sports Park. Thank you so much, and congratulations, Impact.
Thank you. The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca. Carolina, go ahead.
Good evening, City Council. Yes, congratulations on all the wonderful events that have been taking place in the city. We should be very proud. We're really looking excellent to the visitors that come to our city. I did have one request. We got a puppy, which is really exciting. And now that she has all her parvo shots, we're taking her to the parks so she can socialize. And the closest one to my house is Kings Park. In the large dog enclosure, there are some drinking fountains there for the dogs, and they are clogged and they do not work. Would somebody be able to look into that and perhaps unclog them? These dogs work really, really hard, chasing, wrestling, woofing, running, and they need some water. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Mr. Vice Mayor, before we move on, I just wanted to note that our Parks and Rec Director has acknowledged that those are clogged and that he will send somebody out there to take care of those fountains for the dogs.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to introduce Councilmember Meyer that's going to be reading off the proclamation for tonight. So, Councilmember Meyer, if you could do the proclamation, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This proclamation is United Against Hate Week. The dates are November 14th through the 20th. Whereas United Against Hate Week emerged from a United Against Hate poster campaign created by Bay Area cities in response to racially charged rallies in Berkeley and San Francisco in 2017. And whereas when communities participate in United Against Hate Week, they are making a commitment to make everyone feel safe and supported. And whereas United Against Hate Week provides a way for people to work together across differences by engaging and seeking leadership from communities who are targeted by hate, racism, religious, and gender identity-based bigotry, and will help to build stronger long-term relationships. And whereas the City of Brentwood is dedicated to preventing and opposing hate and intolerance in our community, and whereas education, compassion, and cooperation are key to unlocking, understanding, and embracing differences between people, and whereas the City of Brentwood encourages residents to celebrate diverse history, culture, and traditions while educating residents on the importance of supporting social justice and inclusion, and whereas the City of Brentwood seeks to join other Bay Area, California, and communities across the country in this United Against Hate Week as an important step in bridging divisions and strengthening our communities, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood declares its enthusiastic support of United Against Hate Week, November 14th through 20th, 2021, dated this 9th day of November 2021. And because there are a lot of different perspectives on hate and how it impacts people, we have two different community members to accept this proclamation. The first one, Dr. Tamala Hawley, received her PhD in higher education and social change from UCLA. She's been both an educator and an administrator for colleges and universities, and she is currently serving on the Liberty Union High School Board. Dr. Hawley is focused on student outcomes and is a champion for helping students to receive equal opportunities and to rise to their full potential. Dr. Hawley, can you please unmute yourself?
All right, I certainly shall. Thank you. I actually think that this is really cool for acknowledging United Against Hate Week. I commend Brentwood and the Brentwood City Council. I reflected on this today, and I want to read you something that I came up with, and I hope that you'll allow me the opportunity to just kind of read through something that I've been thinking about. So here we go. And I think hate has to do everything with fear. And fear is something that we all experience. And typically when we are in pain, we feel the most fear. When we don't know where the pain is coming from, and when we think our very survival is at stake, as humans, we start to look for ways to survive. We look around and we think, well, who must be the source of that pain? And so that's kind of what prejudice and racism and intolerance comes from. When we see people who are new or who are different, it sometimes feels natural to paint those other persons as the source of our hurt. It's the blame game. We all know it. We know it well. It stems from ignorance, or it could be defined as a lack of understanding of the other person. We don't understand their culture, what they're doing. We don't see their value. We don't get their humanity. We all have this in us. Now, this fear, plus this lack of understanding, or you can also call it ignorance, creates bias and prejudice. And when you couple this same fear and ignorance with power, that's where you'll find racism. And James Baldwin, one of my favorite authors, said that ignorance aligned with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Racism is real. Intolerance is real. There is no doubt of that. We see it played out every day on the national level. You see people being targeted or discriminated or banned just because of the color of their skin, their national origin, or their religion, their sexual orientation, all kinds of things. But we've also seen how it can impact our own community here in Brentwood. I know I've witnessed people being targeted unfairly, whether it be in the grocery store or at school, where my kids have gone. We've all seen it. I've been targeted myself. I've been denied jobs. My children have had difficulties at school only for the very reason that they are different. It's upsetting when individual people do this, you know, like in the grocery store when you get that kind of eye look when people perceive you to be a particular nationality. But when racism is a part of the structures that are central to our life in communities such as Brentwood, like in our schools or in housing, policing, or other structures, that's a problem. That's called systemic racism. And as a community, we need to hold our public figures, including myself, including this council, we need to hold them accountable for ensuring right and fair treatment for everyone, no matter what they look like, who they worship, who they love, or where they come from. I believe that we all want that, and I certainly want that. So that's why I really appreciate you today for putting forward this anti-racist proclamation and a proclamation around intolerance and anti-bullying. I believe it's a good start. However, be clear, it must be followed up with action. Action in terms of policies. Every one of us, every day, we must take action against this form of intolerance. And so in closing, I recently learned a new saying from a colleague who happens to live in Guam. I love learning new languages, and this is an interesting saying that I learned. And I won't say it right, so don't blame me for that. But it goes like this: Ina dahi yan ina gofli'i. It means we care for all and we watch out for one another. We care for all and we watch out for one another. Now, I love Brentwood, and I know you all do too. And what I also know is that we can come together to eliminate hate and intolerance in our own community by our own individual actions. One of the first steps is to let everyone know that we don't have to fear one another, and that the success of one doesn't come at the expense of the other. We can all succeed together. And so I'm happy to accept this proclamation on behalf of the people of Brentwood, and I'm proud of this city council for making this happen.
Thank you, Dr. Holly. And our next speaker is Hannah Smith. a community member who has been public and vocal about how her experiences of being bullied shaped her life and led her to bring positive and caring messages to people to help them through challenging times. You may see Hannah waving her inspiring signs at public intersections throughout town, or see her Here's Your Sign Brentwood social media pages. Hannah, can you please unmute yourself?
Hi, Councilmember Myers. Thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. My name is Hannah Smith. I'm 19 years old, and I hold inspirational signs around Brentwood that say things like "You have a purpose here," or "The world is better with you in it," to help combat suicide and uplift the community. That being said, throughout middle school and high school, I've dealt heavily with bullying, especially cyberbullying, to the point where I tried to take my own life in April of 2017. I remember wishing that the people around me did more, and I remember wishing that my classmates would really just be more open and not filled with so much anger. And I always wondered why they were so filled with hatred. And listening to Dr. Hawley speak, the quote she said, saying fear has a lot to do with hatred, that really resonated, because she's right. When you're young, you have a lot of influences in your life, and now looking back, I realize some of them might have had a lot of hurt within themselves, which made them act out towards others, including me. And I know that if I were to have seen a sign that told me to not give up, I would have opened up to my parents about how I needed help instead of hurting in silence. I would have opened up towards teachers, someone, instead of just being silent. So I hold them around town for that very reason, to be the sign someone may need to know that their life is worth living. I know what it's like to experience hatred, which is why I'm absolutely honored to accept this proclamation and for United Against Hate Week. And I'm truly appreciative of what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for inviting me on tonight. Thank you, Councilmember Meyer, for recommending me to accept this proclamation. And thank you, City Council, for listening to my story. I know it was short. I don't know what else to say, but I'm grateful.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for sharing your story.
Thank you.
I'd actually like to make a comment to Hannah. I was driving down Balfour Road. It was kind of a stressful day that day, and my mind was just focused on things, but all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this person standing on the corner with an inspirational sign, and I got to tell you, I just kind of let go of that stress. A smile, I just started smiling, and all I could think about was that saying, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it did make a difference. It did make a difference. So thank you for doing that, and I'm sure there's so many other people that feel exactly the same way that I do, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy that it helped. That really warms my heart.
Once again, I'd like to thank Councilmember Meyer and also both presenters for wonderful presentations. And on behalf of the city, like Councilmember Meyer says, that we appreciate everything that you guys are doing out there. Right now, we're going to go into informational items. So if we can start from the left to the right, Councilmember Meyer is going first, and then go from there. I'm sorry, it was Councilmember Meyer, not Myers. Bad with names, I apologize for that.
You'll learn eventually, right? Thank you, Vice Mayor. My informational report since the last time we met, I had a meeting with Sunflower Alliance to learn a little bit more about the efforts the climate action efforts that are going on through the county. I had a League of East Bay Division meeting, Liberty High School homecoming parade, which was something I've never done before. I've gone to many parades, but never sat in a car. It was a very unique experience. My driver, Autumn, if you were by any chance listening, thank you so much, and thanks for the conversation. It was really interesting to me to talk to someone who lives in the city, who doesn't come to council meetings, and pick her brain a lot about how she feels about some of these things we don't necessarily hear from, the people that don't come. So that was really, really interesting. And thank you to Bill Brandt Ford, because there was a shortage on convertibles. So the dealership donated some cars for the students to assign to riders. I did go to Hometown Halloween, and I would agree it was just fantastic to see people that were so happy to be together again and to be celebrating something as silly and small town fun and, family oriented as Halloween. It was just great to see. California Alliance of Local Electeds meeting, did some staff meetings, and then on Sunday I made a presentation at the Hospice East Bay Tree of Light ceremony downtown. Very, very moving, and city staff did a great job of lighting the tree at the exact right time to honor those who had passed. Really an honor to take part in that, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rary.
Since the last time we met, I attended the Retail Strategies upcoming webinars, Holiday Trends, and ICSC Here We Go 2021 conference about the conference in Las Vegas, and then spoke with our Economic Development Department after that on how we can attend one of those and be proactive and reach out to the type of businesses, the retail businesses that we want to bring to this town. I also attended the Cal Cities East Bay Division meeting where CCTA and ACTA executive directors gave an update on what's going on in Alameda County and in Contra Costa County as far as transportation projects. Highway 239, which goes from Tracy, the I-205 580 interchange, which ultimately will cross through past the Byron Airport and continue this way. So there will be some improvements along Vasco Road for this. And this is a long time coming. This roadway has actually been on the books since 1959, and it is finally starting to get some traction. I attended the Diwali celebration at Veterans Park, and I got to tell you, it was the bright, colorful saris that were there. It was just a joy to be there, and it's from India, a celebration of light over darkness, and it was incredible. I really had a good time there, and got to taste a lot of great food, and just learn a little bit more about that custom. I also attended the Land Use and Development Committee where we oversaw the beautification and facade grant applications, which will be coming to council, I believe, on our next meeting. Oh, okay, it'll come in December, and then the council will weigh in on that. I attended the Day of the Dead event over there on Brentwood Boulevard, and I had arrived just after the parade. I heard so many great things about the parade that were there, and I'm sorry that I missed it, but I was coming from another meeting just before that. So I missed that, but was able to see some of the dances that were there. And before I had to take off to my next meeting, which was the PAL board meeting. And at the PAL board meeting, we discussed the Tamale Festival, which will be November 20th at the Veterans Hall. Tickets are on sale on Eventbrite. I believe it's $35 per ticket. You can purchase a table of 10 for $300 or a full service table for $500, which includes 5 drink tickets per person at the table, 5 raffle tickets per person at the table, and you have your own service person there to bring you everything that you need. So that one is a really steal of a price with all those different things in there. And there's also going to be a drive-through, so for those of you who'd like to not attend an in-person event, but would still like to support PAL, I believe it's $50. You get a dozen tamales, you get some salad, and it's a bottle of the soda, the Mexican soda that's
Jarritos.
Okay, and I forget what else is coming in there, but and then you can also purchase additional tamales, and there's pork, chicken, beef, and I forget what the other one was, but anyway, so there is a choice of 4 different types of tamales, and so either way, in person or the drive-through, and again, that's November 20th. And if you want more information on that or want to purchase tickets, you can contact me through my email address at krary@brentwoodca.gov. I also attended the Cal Cities ACA 7 Assembly Constitutional Amendment 7 Working Group meeting, which brought up the different things that the statewide housing initiative is talking about, which our own Councilmember Mendoza is on one of the main people on that initiative, and it's to roll back the SB 9, SB 10, and some of the other housing bills that are out there that the state legislature has recently passed. I also attended the Glideways demonstration, which is something that Antioch, Oakley, Brentwood, and Pittsburgh are working together through the Contra Costa Transportation Authority to bring a mode of transportation that will connect all those different cities with a transportation, autonomous vehicle transportation that will take you within seconds from a location out to seconds to pick up the Glideways autonomous vehicle, and it will take you out to wherever you're going nonstop, whether that is to Pittsburgh to a doctor's appointment or whether it's to the E-BART station in Antioch or Bay Point. It is really exciting, and we did ask that they come and present their virtual reality for all of us to do it so we can experience it that way, and then the public will also be able to view it and see exactly what the council is seeing at the same time. So they're going to try to work on that maybe January or February. I met with the Assistant City Manager, Tom Hansen, regarding economic development and how better communication can take place between staff and council. I met with our Public Works Director regarding potential strategic plan initiatives and grant opportunity to fund some of that. I participated in a Women of Faith service project. There was probably 50 of us women, and we sat around filling jars for Kaleidoscope, a cancer support group. And each table's like we did the chocolate chip muffin mix, and another table did chocolate chip cookies and hot chocolate mix and a spiced tea mix and a 5-bean soup mix and a creamy soup, and it was just amazing. I mean, we got it done in pretty quick time, but all of these will go into care packages for those who are experiencing, who the Kaleidoscope is supporting for the people who have cancer. So, and they do look for residents who do have cancer so that they can provide these to them. So if you know somebody or you are someone that has cancer, if you can reach out to Kaleidoscope, they are a group out in Byron. They are looking for names of people who they can help support. And I also met with, or spoke with a resident regarding the Sand Creek Road extension on tonight's agenda. They had some questions regarding that, and that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Mendoza.
Since the last time we met, I also attended the Day of the Dead Festival with my family and friends visiting from out of town. It was beautiful to see all of that. So that was great. We had Halloween, so I hope everyone had a great Halloween. We had 345 groups come through my house that night, so I don't know how many people that was. I also attended with Councilmember Rary the Land Use and Economic Development meeting, so it'll be great to see where all those beautification grants are going to. The initiative that Councilmember Rary referred to is the Brand Huang Mendoza initiative for housing control for cities, and we received title and summary, so that is now live. We will start beginning to collect signatures. I will be at your farmers market if anyone wants to sign for your land use issues to belong to the city and not to the state. So sometimes people come and say, why didn't you do something about it? And I'm like, I can't, it's a state law. So anything from 2017 to now would go away, and the cities would take care of that. I want to make something clear. We are about affordable housing when it comes to land use, and our position is that the state has failed us. None of their bills actually support affordable housing, the latest ones included. So that's why I'm part of it, because I believe in affordable housing, and we've been failing miserably. Attended a meeting, Cal City's meeting around local control initiative, the ACA 7, the same one that Councilmember Rary attended a Cal City's meeting Zoom, new housing laws, programs, and funding. Met with the city attorney regarding density bonuses. We get a lot of questions around density bonus, so I wanted to understand exactly the math behind that and how to calculate that. Met with former Senator Pro Tem Fred Keeley, was interviewed with him, and spoke to the city in Gabriel Valley regarding local land use and control, what we're doing, how, our position on it. Attended the Brentwood Unified School District meeting, a resident meeting of all Californians, livable cities regarding land use. Listened in on the Kern County. They're talking about advancing good quality jobs while advancing climate policies and their local environment. So how do we do that? How do we find a good balance between our environment and also not losing jobs? Because I know a lot of people are afraid of losing their jobs that could be in the oil and gas industry. And last night I attended the City of Lafayette City Council meetings, and they do things a little bit different. So maybe I can bring some best practices, Damien. And that's it.
Thank you. For myself, I had various meetings with different staff members here from the city of Brentwood. I also attended the Alicia Ramirez event for the Brentwood School District. They named the Brentwood School site gym in her name, which is huge. If you learn the story about Alicia Ramirez and her dedication not only to the school district, but also to the community, and working really closely with farm working families for many years within the area. I also attended the hometown Halloween event, went there for a little while with my family. I also attended and was involved with the Dia de los Muertos event. We would like to thank, actually been asked to say this, to thank the council members that attended the event. Also thank the city manager, thank the Brentwood Police Department, who did a wonderful job, not only being there, but also participating in the event. I'll be honest with you, the feedback that has come back from that community is huge in regards to the participation of our law enforcement because of historical histories, in regards to how their perception was with law enforcement. The feedback is tremendous in regards to that it was just comfortable, everybody having a good time, and really just seeing law enforcement stepping up. I also like to thank, they would like to also thank Miguel, who owns one of the Mexican candy stores in that area, for being part of the organizing. But we also would like to thank, the organization, and I know that I do work for the organization, but it has nothing to do with that, because I think one of the callers has a misperception of the event and how it was organized. But the organization itself did not only fund it, but they also ran it. They organized it and did everything that this event needed to be done to make it successful, with collaboration with some of our local stores there in that area. And also, we would like to thank some of the key funder, which is the Latino Community Foundation that's based out of San Francisco, and there was one other large funder that was part of this. So we would also like to thank them. So that's all I have for right now. Thank you. Sorry about that. I also like to give the opportunity to the city manager and to any staff that would like to give any updates or share anything.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to give an announcement again to the community that the city is currently working with its redistricting commission, and they have put together an outreach program that we've got flyers and brochures and a website, including multiple tools to craft your communities of interest. And these are the maps that you assign at your understanding of how communities come together. And then there's going to be a public hearing on December 2nd at 6 p.m. And that's where it'll be a public hearing again to consider any maps that are submitted at the time. And then that will continue through the end of the year, calendar year, December 30th. So I encourage the community to continue to participate in that redistricting process. And for more information, you go to the city's website, and on the bottom right, there's a link directly to that web page. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're at this consent calendar. Do I have a motion? Or
Make a motion to adopt the consent calendar as C.1 through C.2.
I'll second that.
I have a first and a second. Margaret, can you do, I think it's a roll call vote. Is that how we do it? No? Okay. Thank you.
We do need to call for the vote, though.
Consolo.
Honorable Vice Mayor, if I could just jump in for a second. I think you have a motion and a second, and you can just ask all those in favor and all those opposed. Because the mayor is not participating remotely tonight, we don't need to do the roll call vote.
Okay.
So you can just go, unless the council desires to do a roll call vote, there's not a requirement.
No, that's
tonight.
fine. I know it, with other items we've done that, but that's fine. Okay, if all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think we have 4. Public hearings? Okay, it's new to me. Item D1 pertains to the non-urgency emergency response and city CFD ordinances and amendments to the district city community facilities agreement. City Manager Tim Ogden will now be presenting on this item.
Vice Mayor and Council, this item should look very familiar. We've talked about it a few times now, but I'll give a brief overview of it. And we do have one new feature to it that you haven't seen before. This is related to amending the Brentwood Municipal Code, Chapter 17, related to emergency medical and fire protection service funding. In short, this is the community facility district that the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District formed recently this year. And with the urgency ordinance that you approved on September 21st and then extended on October 26th, it allows us to have the authority to require any new development to annex into that fire district CFD as a condition of approval. The urgency ordinance is effective through 2022, and tonight we're considering doing the non-urgency ordinance. The Planning Commission also considered it because it does affect Title 17, the zoning code, and they recommended approval for your consideration on October 19th. If you approve it tonight, there will be a second reading on November 16th, so next Tuesday, again, our regular scheduled meeting due to the holiday schedule. If approved, then it'll be effective 30 days later, and then would also repeal and replace the urgency ordinance. By quick overview, again, any residential or non-residential development that meets these particular triggers with a building permit would need to annex into that CFD. There is a fee of approximately $4,500 from the fire district to apply for that annexation, and again, it would be a condition of approval from the city. We discussed previously the administration, that the CFD is of the fire district and any successor agencies, and that's all included in that administration agreement. The fire district is obligated to hold the city harmless and indemnify against any lawsuits related to the CFD. The county will collect the tax and distribute it to the fire district or its successors. And what we have before you tonight, in addition to that municipal code addition, is an amendment to the agreement that you approved back in September. And a slight amendment we wanted to reflect, we had highlighted at the time that we weren't exactly sure what those administrative reimbursable costs would be, and have since negotiated an approximate cost of $500 per annexation for those administrative costs. So we will track those costs with each annexation that occurs, and in the agreement it stipulates that we'd reassess that and reassess whether that's sufficient or not going forward in July of 2023. So it gives about 18 months to look at that collection and see that it's appropriate. The other municipal code section before you tonight is related in the sense that it's adding a new section that relates to City Community Facilities District Service funding. So the city has since 2002 authorized community facility districts and required developments to annex into it. By adding it into the municipal code, we're now consistent with having a fire CFD requirement, and this would just add more transparency and make it easier when you're looking for what the obligations for new development is in the city to see all of these requirements in one location. And this chapter does not increase or revise any current CFD rates or requirements. So nothing in that regard changes. So after we field questions, open the public hearing and any council discussion, and then recommend you make two motions. One, to adopt the amendment to the agreement, and then to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance to add chapters 17.635 and 17.636 to the municipal code. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll return on November 16th for that second reading, for it to be effective 30 days later. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
So at this time, we're going to open it up for council to ask any type of clarifying questions to staff. If we could, one by one, I guess, if anybody has any questions.
So I do have a clarifying question. It's been stated that since we are since East Contra Costa Fire Protection District is in the process of consolidating with Confire, and that Confire won't need those extra funds. But the reason why the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District has needed the extra funds is because the tax rate areas in this out in East County, Far East County, is significantly lower, in some cases less than or more than half of what the rest of the county is receiving. So is it true that despite who runs this, whether it's Confire or East Contra Costa Fire Protection District, in order to provide the service necessary for future residents, they do need that CFD to make up that delta between what it costs to actually provide fire service for residents versus what is actually coming in per the tax rate area for each specific home. Is that true?
That is true, and I would say it's been well documented that the fire service is not up to standards and has several deficiencies in fire stations and service level demands, and so it's all approaches on the table from their perspective. I could assume at some point if they consolidate with the county, they could reassess what those rates are with a new study, but at this point, based on the information that's available, and it is the fire district's CFD and their study, these are their rates. This is very much needed.
So, and I do recall when Confire, when some of the development in Antioch that was closer to Brentwood, that was at that 7% tax rate area for the fire protection service, the Confire was against the building of those homes because it would, they were not getting enough funds to make up for those homes that were closest to Brentwood. because they needed that extra revenue, and may also look at asking Antioch to do CFDs as well if this works out for us. So it's not just a matter of us instituting this, it's a matter of trying to make services so that we can continue to have services instead of 10, 15, 20 years from now saying, oh, you know, we've run out of money, we need to start cutting services out in this area again. Anyway, so thank you.
Anyone have questions for staff? Any clarifying questions? No? Okay. We have no questions. So if there are no more other questions from the council, I will now open it up to public comment. It's public hearing. Sorry about that. Margaret?
I received one written public comment. Summary is shown on the screen. Full copies of these comments will be made available on the City Council Agenda's webpage. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I'm not seeing any hands raised.
So we don't have any public comment?
No.
Nope. Okay. With no public comment, if there are no other speakers, I will need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there any council is there any council discussion? If there are no other questions or comments, I'll now consider a motion.
I'll make a motion, as detailed in the staff report, adopt a resolution amending the City District Community Facilities District, the facilities agreement.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Now, do I have to, Margaret, here, do we have to do?
I think that's on the next motion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, council motion unless contrary to, as detailed in the staff report. Am I supposed to be on the next one, on number 10? I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Okay.
I believe it'd be appropriate if someone would like to make a motion regarding the ordinance, now would be the time.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, as detailed in the staff report, introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance adding chapter 17.635 and 17.636 to the municipal code.
Second.
I have a first and second. So I think this is where I go to you, Margaret, right?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brentwood adding Chapter 17.635 Emergency Medical and Fire Protection Service Funding and Chapter 17.636 City Community Facilities District Service Funding to the Brentwood Municipal Code.
It'd be appropriate to call for the vote now.
Okay. It doesn't have it on here, but okay, call for vote. Sorry about that, guys. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Okay. Request for future agenda items?
Before we move forward, just so that in case there's somebody who hasn't voted aye, I mean, should we be actually asking for all those, you know, all those in favor, aye, all those opposed? Shouldn't we be asking that question, or is it just assumed that we're all?
I think thus far it's been unanimous throughout, but if the Vice Mayor would like, he could say all those in favor and all those opposed, just to clarify it in case there are items where it's not unanimous.
All those opposed? Okay. So, 4 yes. So we're going to go to requested future agenda items. Does anybody have any? Okay? If you have any new agenda requests, please raise your hand, and I will call on you in order. Okay, there's no hands. Okay, requested items. Is that, we go to E2? Requested items. Councilmember Meyer will explain her request.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I made a request at the last, I was going to call it a staff meeting, kind of is, the last council meeting to have a discussion around the potential of increasing our affordable housing percentage. I agree with some of what Councilmember Mendoza is saying, in that I think there's been some failures in securing affordable housing across the state and also in Brentwood. I think what I'd really like for us to move forward with is to set some standards, find out what other cities of comparable size and format are doing when it comes to those numbers, similar economics and structure. I want to also, as part of the staff report I'm requesting, I'd like for staff to please help the public to understand exactly what affordable housing means, if there are levels of income. There's a lot of confusion around affordable housing and the association between that or disassociation and Section 8, for example. So I think that would really help for the public to understand what those differences and similarities are. I initially discussed 15% as a suggestion, but I'm seeing, as I'm looking and doing my own research, I think Pleasanton just went to 20% and San Francisco went to 25%. So I believe this is open for discussion. It should be, for us to really think about what we need to do moving forward. We're really close to build out, so we need to make sure that we're covering the people who really need the affordable housing in town. I don't want to focus on having one stand-up apartment building in a section of town that's less economically strong and put people in one place. I mean, I know we've got apartments that are coming up and townhomes that are coming up currently, ones down the road, and those are wonderful, but I would like us to just really have a full discussion about planning for this. Like, how do we ensure that there's inclusionary affordable housing for residents? And I know we've got mostly smaller developments, but I was looking at, in the strategic plan, focus area 4, land use planning, says we are to provide a diversity of housing opportunities, including equitable distribution of affordable housing for all socioeconomic segments of the Brentwood community. And I think that is very clear in what it's promoting for us, and I think what we need to follow as a guideline. Any questions around that?
I don't think we ask questions now. But
from other council members, as far as clarity, or?
Certainly you could ask questions, or as described in the agenda, you could open the public comment and then allow for council questions and discussions after the public comment. It'd be appropriate to open if you'd like.
Okay. I'd like to thank you, Councilmember Meyer, for your presentation. With that, I'd like to open up public comments now.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I will call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I have one hand raised. Carolina Villaseca, I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you, Councilmember Meyer, for bringing this up. This is very important, and I would like to say that it is very important that the affordable housing be done in developments, not as a standalone area, because we all know what happens with that. People avoid that area like the plague, and those people become a little isolated island in a city. People are like, oh, don't take your kids trick-or-treating over there. And they become like pariahs within a city. So it's much more friendly to have affordable housing units sprinkled throughout developments where there is a sense of community and people don't stand out like that. Like that townhome where we went around and around about the facade and the finishes, that was very painful. It took forever. But the point was that this is what needs to happen. No more in lieu fees, because in lieu fees is how we got SB 9 and SB 10. So I really strongly urge City Council to take a look at what's left to build out in Brentwood and make sure that the developments that get built have those affordable housing units in them. Again, we don't want one area that becomes isolated and people get ostracized. Thank you.
I have no additional hands raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Council members, if you have any questions or wish to express comments on this agenda item, please raise your hand and I will call you in order. Ms. Mendoza, Councilmember Mendoza.
I'm really excited about this agenda item. I'm actually a little bit embarrassed that we're 10% after all of the cities that I've been on calls with. Most of them are over 15, and when I tell them we're 10, they're like in shock. So I think it's the right thing to do for our city. Again, we have very little infill left, but anything we can do is, is fantastic. I think that Carolina Villaseca is correct. I prefer inclusionary affordable housing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to an area that's all affordable housing, but there is a stigma. And it's hard because you have friends there, you live there, and people don't want to go, and people do say things about it. And I think that we should welcome all of our neighbors to be right next door to us, regardless of their socioeconomic standing. And I think that we should be supportive. And I think this is a great step in home ownership for people that otherwise could not afford it. So I am completely in support. I don't know if, Damien, you can tell me if I can talk about this or not, but the in lieu fee part, I'm also finding that a lot of cities ban in lieu fees when it comes to affordable housing. And I think we've used that lever, like when I went through the spreadsheet of everything, it's in lieu fee, in lieu fee, in lieu fee. And I can't help to think if we had not done so many in lieu fees, where would our city be in regards to affordable housing? We'd probably be in a much better position. So I don't know if that's a separate agenda item that I have to bring up, or can we wrap it all up to talk about when we bring in this, this whatever new percentage, can we just do away with the in lieu fees?
As the agenda is written, it discusses possible increases in the developer obligation to construct affordable housing. So that moves a little bit beyond the in lieu fee discussion, but I understand one of the options that council may wish to consider is having this go on to your strategic initiatives, in which case that would likely provide for a broader discussion of the topic and allow some of these other items to be considered at that time.
Okay, thank you. So I'm excited about it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it picks up where the state has failed us. So thank you for bringing it forward.
So I believe it's 2002 when we had our first affordable inclusionary housing, and it was in California Orchard. Since that time, inclusionary housing has been part of the city's affordable housing. And unfortunately, when we went through the recession, they went from having 10% of inclusionary housing down to 2%, and it stayed that way. I fought for it to go up. We did. There was talks about going higher at that time. That I recall something was said to the effect that we would have to show a nexus of the costs associated in order to go up to those higher amounts. With that said, RHNA numbers, regional housing needs assessment numbers that have come down for cities to have to build affordable houses has increased significantly. And so we do need to start building more affordable housing, and inclusionary housing is part of that. And like you said, there are other places. I mean, even out in Concord for the Weapons Naval base. That is, the master planner is conditioned to build 25% affordable housing, and that just recently got passed in Concord. So I too would like to see a higher amount, and also for people out there wondering, if you're a family of four making between like 60, it's a little over 60,000 up to, I believe the new amount is 106,000, family of four, you are considered low income. So that's what they mean by low income housing. There's a different rate for a family of three, a different rate for a family of two, or for a single person. So, and we do have 7 more housing, affordable housing units coming, inclusionary housing units, coming online in I believe it's called Tureen now. They have changed the name, but it is a development that is off of Sand Creek and Brentwood Boulevard, over there by Mary Casey Black. So there are 7 affordable housing inclusionary units being built in that development. Unfortunately, that was at the 2%. Had we been 10%, that would have been 35. But anyway, it is exciting. I think it is. We do need to raise it. I would have loved to have had it higher during the last raising of the amount, but for some reason, we just couldn't. But I think we have an opportunity now with the higher arena numbers to be able to ask for that.
Yeah, when I got on the council, I was very shocked that we were at 2% myself and looing out with fees like crazy. I know that we've had different discussions with different developers at different times over the last couple of years. So I'm really glad that you had brought this up, Councilmember Meyer, for discussion, but also hopefully we'll get to hear more and hopefully increase that. But I know that we've been working our way up. I mean, it was at 2%. I think we went to like 6%, and now we're at 10%. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I really do appreciate you really looking out for that portion of the community as well. So like I said, very shocked when I first got on the council that we were at 2%, and looing out with fees. So once again, thank you. Anybody else have anything else they would like to say? Okay.
I have a question. This might just be, if we all think that it's what we want, why can't we, is there any rules that say we just can't do a motion? Like, why can't we just do it?
Because it's not on your agenda. Your agenda is just to provide staff direction on, or asking staff to spend time and resources on the item. It's not to actually adopt it.
So,
and
but here's the thing.
It would take more than just adopting it. We'd have to study it and prepare necessary documentation to do it, versus just saying do it right now. So not tonight.
No, not tonight, but then just for process, because I know I'm a year in, but I'm still learning. If we all look like we want it, how much staff time are we going to spend on something that we're all leaning towards anyway? Like, is there any way to save staff time if we're all feeling good about this?
Well, you're authorizing staff to spend time and resources on it, and clearly the council feels strongly about it. It's not my part of the world of the organization. It'd be the city manager's side and the community development director. But
I guess how can we make this least painful for you to not use up staff time? Like, I mean, I think we all feel good about it. So how do we do that? How do we speed it up and get it done?
Sure. If you want to just come back and have staff come back with a number, we can change the ordinance with the number. If you want a comprehensive study of what are other cities doing, how does it all compare, that's going to require a little bit more time. But we have some other major projects in the way right now, land use wise, but we could come back first of next year and present a number if that's what you really need. If you want to do more comprehensive study, that's going to take more time.
So I think on discussion, can we just discuss the number now? Or, I mean, I don't know how much of a study we need, right? We know, I mean, you've looked at some, I know I've looked at some, you've looked at some. We know where the Bay Area is on them. So you guys are going to go do the work that we've already been doing. So what's the, I don't know. I just feel like it's redundancies to a certain extent.
What were we talking about bringing to the strategic planning meeting then?
The in lieu fees.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Because it's not part of this conversation.
Okay.
It's not part of the conversation, but we're hearing you. That could be included in a staff report as an option.
Yeah, I do think that we should be looking at 20 to 25%, as other cities are doing. It was something I couldn't say when you brought it up last time because I couldn't speak at that point. So, but this time I can, and I do think that 20 to 25% is something, and it's the only way we're going to get our arena numbers. It really is.
I would agree in that I think now is the time to do it. Now is like, I feel we are obligated to do it now to take care of our residents and to try and, move towards meeting those RENA numbers. So I would absolutely support that. I think that's the beauty of this discussion is we're all so enthusiastic about it. I think we can come up with a number that works for everyone.
Yeah, because the more, it just elongates the process. And if we already know, I think the four of us feel good about supporting affordable housing. It's just and I agree, I think 20 should be the minimum. So, it's almost like I feel like an auctioneer, like 20 going once, it's like, that way you guys don't have to do a lot. Like, we're done.
I guess for me, just to be able to say that we did our due diligence, right, is to do some type of research in regards to what other communities are doing. But I'm not that I disagree with any percentage or anything like that, but just to get an idea of what are other cities doing and are we falling in that kind of direction? Not that we can't be different, not that we can't be anything like that, but some type of research. Now, do we have to spend, a lot of time? Probably not. It's just some research in regards to what's happening around us and where do we somewhat fall into that so that when we make a decision, right, we're not following any other city because, like I said, we could be different. Nothing wrong with that. 20%, anything else. But at least we did our due diligence to at least do the research and come back with some type of report. That's something I would feel comfortable with at least something, not just let's do it kind of a thing. That's just me, myself, but not saying 20% is not acceptable or anything like that. But just some type of homework.
Damien, what are the legal repercussions of not doing a study?
It's always helpful to have support for the decisions you're making. And so to have staff do some research to explain to you what other jurisdictions are doing by way of affordable housing requirements will just bolster the actual ordinance that's adopted and will provide support for it if it should be challenged someday. So those sorts of documents, I know that sometimes it is time consuming, sometimes it's frustrating that you want to get something done right away, but it is important to have that support for the decisions you make, because if we're challenged, not having that makes it much more difficult to defend.
So can I mention, I don't believe it's just for the sake of understanding what other cities are doing, because we are feeling right now kind of progressive about moving forward into this, and we're seeing that other cities are doing it. I'm not sure that all the cities that we would research in East County are going to be thinking along the same lines, but I understand that there would be more potentially to this report than just what other cities are doing. What our impacts would be, if there's any kind of roadblocks against doing that, what exactly does it look like? So I would be okay with doing that. I don't think that I want to make a decision based on what everyone else is doing, because I feel that we're in our own space right now and we're feeling strongly that this is what we need to do for our residents. But like I said, I do accept the idea of the study to make sure that we're strong in our resolve for this and that we have legal backing for it.
Any more discussion? No? Okay. So I need a motion. So I need a motion to have staff spend time and resources on this item.
Can you make your own motion?
Yeah, can I do that? I can do that, right? I'd like to make a motion that staff should spend time and resources on researching this item.
I'll second that.
I have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None? Okay.
Since we don't have the masks on any longer, do we need to raise our hands? Because that was the whole purpose, was so that people could tell that we actually spoke behind the mask. That was the only reason why we were raising our hands.
I think I'm okay with you raising it or not raising it. Doesn't matter. Okay, so we're in the business items. Item F1 pertains to the resolution amending the capital improvement program budget for the Sand Creek Road extension project. Jack Dwelly? I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up your name. I'm sorry. Assistant Public Works
It's okay,
Director
it's Jack Dhaliwal.
will now present. Huh?
Okay, it's okay. It's Jack Dhaliwal. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm bad with names.
Ready? Okay. Good evening, Council. My name is Jack Dhaliwal. I'm Assistant Director of Public Works. I will be presenting tonight's item, Sand Creek Road. Business item F1, amendment of CIP budget for Sand Creek Road extension. So slide in front of you shows the proposed alignment of Sand Creek Road that goes through Bridal Gate project. Previously, in 2006, the project was approved and came back again, and still is an application pending. So this project will tie Sand Creek Road extension, extend Sand Creek Road from western terminus of Highway 4 interchange at Sand Creek Road to Hyden Ranch Road and tie in the city of Antioch city limit. It's not moving the slide. It's on. Okay, thank you. Sand Creek Road extension project has been contemplated for a long time. In 2001 general plan, this project was shown as a part of the circulation element. 2006 Bridal Gate project shows Sand Creek Road extension going through it, which that entitlement expired sometime back. Sand Creek Road extension is also consistent with the 2004 general plan circulation element and has been studied with the PA1 traffic circulation as well as surrounding development within Antioch as well as city of Brentwood. City's development fee program, which includes how the reimbursement program works. So typically residential street, 40-foot payment with 60-foot right-of-way within any development or otherwise along the frontage the developer's obligation. Anything beyond that is developer is called, that's their fair share. Anything beyond that is reimbursed through the development fee program, which again development pays on impact fees. This is inconsistent with the Government Code Section 664686, which requires the local agency to reimburse a developer or a subdivider for the cost of land that's dedicated or the cost of improvements. 60-foot right-of-way is their obligation, 40-foot improvements width, that's also their obligation. Next slide, please. So this project, proposed project will extend Sand Creek Road roughly about 2,300 linear feet from western end of Highway 4 bypass to the Hyden Ranch Road. The roadway that staff is proposing 56-foot roadway width right away, which includes 16-foot median and 220-foot width pavement on each side, along with the street lights, utilities, and 4-lane full width bridge over Sand Creek. So city will be using development impact funds to build the 2-lane, those improvements. The remaining 2 lanes and a landscaping would be constructed by the developer when that adjoining development happens. Developer, which is Discovery Builders, has signed right-of-way agreement with the city that we received today to dedicate right-of-way, and that reimbursement for that right-of-way will happen as a fee credit when they pull their building permit. So at that point, there is no cost to city to acquire the right-of-way. So Sand Creek Road extension is also regional project under East Contra Costa Regional Fee and Financing Authority has adopted the slide that shows the alignment of Sand Creek Road from western end of Highway 4 to Deer Valley Road. So that portion is annexed into ECRFA fee funding. So the next step now need to happen is prioritize the project. Then the project could be funding. And if that our project is approved by council and we're moving forward, then we also have potential funding of roughly $3.5 million from ECRFA fee program. So why we are doing a project? What are the benefits to City of Brentwood? It ensures consistency with our general plan, circulation element that ties all the circulation around the surrounding area, PA1, which is the Innovation Center, and then also tying into Antioch Road, which is Hydrant Branch Road, which is shared commonly, City of Brentwood as well as Antioch. This is also a key initiative of our strategic plan, so there will be compliance with that. Also critical to any development happening in PA1, Innovation Center, it provides a direct access to that. Currently, any given time, Lone Tree Way is highly congested because there's so much traffic going down. There is another way traffic has to use the Lone Tree Way. So this provides a direct access. Any development within PA1, it will help foster the environment for bringing any development within that. And also, this completes the regional connection that the previous slide showed, ECRFA regional project. This also provides fire and emergency response access to Kaiser directly once the Sand Creek Road within Antioch is constructed, and our Sand Creek Road portion is tied to that. The project is funded with the development impact fees. All the residential or commercial development within the city contribute impact fees. And those impact fees are the one funding the project. And developer still has obligation to complete the remaining improvements. And then also we have potential funding from ECRFA, which is roughly about $3.5 million. Actual amount will be determined when we have a reimbursement agreement with that. This concludes staff's presentation. Should council have any questions, staff is available.
So before we start with questions, Mr. Dhaliwal, I want to apologize for mispronouncing your name earlier. But yeah, if we have any clarifying questions for staff, please raise your hand and I'll call you in order.
I've got a couple questions. If you can go back to the Kaiser, okay, so currently the Promenade Vineyards development has been built and do you know of Antioch, if that roadway between Hindorn Ranch Road, which is our city limits, and Hillcrest has been built, and I know Aviano is in the process of being built as well, and so they'll get two lanes, one in each direction between the Promenade Vineyards and the Aviano. Where ECRFA comes in is that last quarter of Sand Creek Road. And until ECRFA, and ECRFA's got a priority list, and I know James Donlin is ahead of Sand Creek Road when it comes to finishing it off. Just so that, I just want residents to realize that even if we build this section, that it's not going to complete the roadway until the funding is available for that last quarter section, correct?
Yes, so we have received plans from Antioch developer for Hydon Ranch Road portion that's within about our city limit. They also have approved plans for within the portion within their city limit. So that's true. So until that connection is made, so the timing wise, they are working on their side. We could be working on our side. It could match, but it all depends on the housing development, how fast that moves.
Now, the other thing is the 4-lane bridge. Now, we've talked about doing a 2-lane road from the Highway 4 off-ramp there and taking it to the four-lane bridge over Sand Creek, and then taking it up to the Hindorn Ranch intersection. So with that four-lane bridge, are we going to continue it down to 2 lanes on the north side of the bridge? Or is it going to, I guess I'm looking at a 4-lane bridge and thinking, how's the striping down a 4-lane bridge going to be when you got 2 lanes on each side? You know?
So the way we are planning to do is the 16 feet median, just like O'Hara Avenue has right now. Then we have 20-foot pavement on each side. So the bridge will be slightly extra width at that point. And then we are simply using the center portion of the bridge and could be striping that, not to use the bridge on the other portion, because it ties back into 1 lane again.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Like you mentioned the circulation plan, so I pulled it out, general plan. Sand Creek goes to Hairdorn Ranch, and then it goes to Hillcrest to American. Am I correct in saying that's not going to happen anymore on the Antioch side? Or have we partnered with Antioch to work on that?
So the slide that I think Tim has right now, you see in front of you. So that's an ACFA regional project, takes it from all the way from Highway 4 to Deer Valley Road.
Mm-hmm.
So is this the segment that you are asking about?
No, I guess I have and I talked to Tim about this. I know this needs to happen. It's going to happen. I'm just a little concerned about the circulation, because right now when you go to the high school, the kids coming from Antioch, they come down Deer Valley and then Balfour, right? So you have kids coming that way and then kids coming from the Brentwood way, and they meet and they go to school. I have a concern about them coming down Sand Creek when that's completed, and then coming through Brentwood Hills Shadow Lakes or going the bypass, and that elongating the traffic over on Balfour Road or through Country Club. So do we know what Antioch's plan is for that extension of Hairdorn Ranch?
So Antioch right now, presently from East Bay, where the Home Depot East Bay Mart is, south of that, roughly about half of the length of Hairdorn Ranch Road is already constructed.
Mm-hmm.
The other half, we just received the plan. They're planning to construct soon, and then we can expedite that process. So City of Brentwood has already an agreement with Antioch Developer to share the cost. So that road is happening soon. We don't know the timing, but we have the plan.
Does the plan you got from Antioch reflect the one in our general plan, or is it different? Is it going to help the circulation or not?
Yes, it's tied with our general plan.
Okay.
Their circulation or what they're constructing.
Yeah, so
they're
someday.
collaborating with us.
Okay, because we hear a lot about the high school traffic. Okay, and then my other questions are around the budget. So 2021 to 2022 will be funded by development impact fees in that year? And that is the sheet, sorry.
Yes. So at this point, we have identified the funding, $9.3 million coming from roadway development impact fees. We also potentially could receive $3.5 million, which we show ACRFA funding that is shown as unfunded at this point.
That's part of the 5.2 million?
3.5, and then we are short roughly $1.7 million.
Okay.
And then this is an estimated conceptual stage. We're not going to know the actual construction costs until we go to bid. So at that point, the staff will identify the funding from other sources before we go to bid.
So, but I guess my question is, these dollars, the 1.7 million, 5.8, and 1.8 from 2021 to 24, are those already sitting in a fund, or are we expected to collect those from development impact fees in each year, or were they already accrued somewhere?
So $9.3 million is already accumulated in development impact fees.
Okay.
And
so that's already sitting in an account.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I want residents to understand that. That amount, that $9.3 million, you've already set aside. It's sitting in an account somewhere because you've been anticipating this Sand Creek extension. It's just in what year you're going to use it and pay it out.
Exactly.
Okay, that's, I just want people to understand that portion. And those, I think, were all my questions right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My turn. I felt like when I first read this that everything was coming at us very suddenly, that I hadn't seen this or expected this to come in the way that it did, and it threw me off. It was just such a big number and such a big project that, boom, it has to happen now. So part of my question was, why does it feel like such a rush now? Why does it feel like we're all of a sudden making this decision? I'm wondering how far out, like, are there, you talked about the potential innovation center occupants that are interested. Is it something around that? Is it something that we're getting some interest in now? We want to make sure this happens sooner rather than later?
Okay, I'm going to throw lifeline.
I think there's a couple of factors. One, we've been working on the master plan for the Innovation Center at Brentwood. And so we plan to come back to discuss any implementing changes from that master plan to the specific plan. It's also one of our strategic plan initiatives, and the focus right now on giving you an update on the current status of all the strategic plan initiatives. That was one of the key ones. So we said, well, let's see if we can move it forward. We do have increasing interest by economic development prospects in the region there. And so it's just another impetus to say, why wait another 2 years? We had fully anticipated that residential project to the south to put it in and get started on it. When that didn't get approved, it just put more pressure to say, well, then we're going to have to move forward at least on the 2 lanes that the city is responsible for. So that confluence of several factors all came together and said, instead of waiting until next year to amend the CIP, let's get started on it now.
Great, thank you. In this discussion, in the presentation, and looking at the documentation of the agenda packet, there's a lot of Antioch is saying they're going to do the Hindorn Ranch thing, and we're not positive about that. And there is a verbal agreement with the developer, and there is a potential funding from ECRFA. So I want to feel a little bit more confident about those things happening so this can actually come to fruition in the way that we're hoping it does.
So Antioch side, Hindorn Ranch Road, the portion they already built, half of that is already built. The other half we received the plans. So they have a plan to move forward to building that portion of Hindorn Ranch Road. And
how far south are they planning to put Hindorn Ranch Road?
They already done 2,000 linear feet roughly, and another 15 is what they need to tie into Sand Creek Road.
Okay, what about the ECRFA funding?
So ECRFA funding, I believe in calling, it's not done until it's done. So that's what we call it, potential funding. So ECRFA board already this year in the beginning annexed the Sand Creek Road into qualified funding, eligible funding project. And James Donlan, as Councilmember Reddy mentioned, is the first project on the line. The second could be Sand Creek Road. As I have already have discussions with the ECRFA program manager, and ECRFA board is the one that need to approve that. And City of Antioch and City of Brentwood, at least there are 2 sponsors there. So hopefully there is support, but it's not done until it's done. We think it's the one eligible project that they will sponsor it.
Okay, thank you. And in your perception, is Antioch seeing this as much of a benefit as we are?
Correct. So their circulation also improves a lot because Lone Way, any given on the time, is busy. It's all log jam. So this helps their circulation. Hindorn Ranch area where Kaiser and all of those development tied directly into Highway 4.
So they're motivated to make this happen as much as we are to make sure that it finishes on their end as well. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from council? No. Okay, if there are no other questions from the council, the public comment period is now open.
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I do have one hand raised. I'll start with Cynthiana Todor. Cynthiana, go ahead.
Good evening again. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this item. As most of the council members already voiced, we feel very confused and there's a lot of unknowns on this project, and I would like to speak on a couple of them. I've been, involved with budget modification, budget requests, transfers, and so on for most of my professional life. And yet we have another example of a bad staff report on hand. I am glad that the council members actually raised questions for further clarification, and I am glad to see that actually the staff was prepared to answer them. So I see that as a positive of all this. However, what I would like to see in the staff report going, for the future, clear business justification. We hear, PA1, possibly Kaiser, possibly that. Again, very, very many unknowns, and the very loose and vague language without clear support in the staff report brings a lot of confusion. I understand some negotiations are confidential, but at least you can have a closed session and ask for all those details just to put the decision makers at ease. It is mentioned that this road will provide improved access to regional medical emergency services. Yes, finally, Kaiser was mentioned verbally tonight, not in the report. So do we have any assurance that ENIAC will actually complete that road? Because otherwise, it's not going to be portrayed and seen as a regional opportunity, and I don't even know how to call it, in order to get the extra funding. So again, another thing that's missing, talking about that, what if scenarios? What's the plan B? What if the unfunded amount is not financed from the identified source, indicating in the report? Also, we need a clear analysis on benefits to the community. That's very vague at this point, just to get to Kaiser, but dependent on so many other things, right? And also I have to bring up the timing that Council Meyer very well articulated here. Why now? Why do we have to spend this money when we don't have the certitude that things will fall into place? And let me not mention Bridal Gate and one of the run-on.
The speaker's timer is up. The next speaker is Carolina Villaseca.
Good evening, City Council. I just want to stress something that the previous caller mentioned, which is what happens if we start building and then Antioch delays. What's plan B? That's a very important question, because there's a lot of variables here that would all have to fall into place. And it almost sounds like it would be better if we waited until Antioch actually begins their part to ensure that it's going to be a contiguous road and not choppy, because then, the purpose of finishing the road will not happen. Thank you.
I have no additional speakers with their hands raised. Oh, I do have one more. Jackie, go ahead.
Hi, hello everyone. I just want to make a quick comment here. Actually, it's a great question from the council member ask why this project has been, why we are rushing for it. Actually, I'm living in Brentwood for so many years. We have been waiting for this project for, many years, just because one of the huge benefits is for the access to Kaiser. We have a lot of senior members living in the Brentwood, then I think that's bring a lot of value to the city, to those senior members, including everyone need the medical access. Then another one is just my personal perspective. We have to start somewhere. Then it's very difficult to wait until all the resources, all the 100% things confirmed to start a project, make sure the project is 100% successful. Then sometimes we may have to take some risk. Then I think that innovation and taking a certain level risk is a charm of the California way to doing things. Especially we are living in the Silicon Valley around area, then it just from Brentwood resident coming here, I'm supporting this project, and I believe council members can make it happen successfully. Thank you.
I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
If there are no other speakers, we will close public comments. Is there any council discussion? If there are any
Yes.
other council discussion, I'm sorry.
Yes. People say, why are we doing this now? When we did the specific plan for the PA1, we allocated $11.5 million to bring the wet utilities underneath Highway 4 so that projects are more shovel ready. This is the same thing. I mean, this was a concern that I had, that we have Lone Tree, which is very busy, and how are we going to bring in businesses to a very busy intersection, already. We needed to have, the ability to bring people up Sand Creek to Hindorn Ranch Road, as well as Lone Tree to Hindorn Ranch Road to enter into PA1. And it's so that we can make PA1 shovel ready. We did the EIR on there to make it shovel ready. And that is the purpose of this, is to be able to attract more businesses. If it's not shovel ready, they kind of look at us and go, you know what? It may be a good project, but not now. And they may go to Antioch, they may go to Oakley and bring those businesses to them where the infrastructure is already there. So we have the opportunity as a council to provide that shovel-ready area by building the infrastructure ahead of time. And as I said, we've already allocated $11.5 million to do just that with the wet utilities, and now we can do it with the roadway and the bridge that's necessary to bring it to PA1. And I'm not as concerned about the Kaiser end of it. That will come in time. I mean, personally, I'd like to see it go through, but I go to Kaiser, so I would like to see it go through in time. But I do know that portion of Sand Creek with those two developments that I mentioned earlier is supposed to be built. Actually, maybe our community development director can answer that more clearly, since she used to work for Antioch's community development department, as to what is going on with those roadways for Sand Creek. But I think that we need to look at it for infrastructure for PA1 and not necessarily, no, I would like to get the answers, but I think that we should look at it as infrastructure for PA1 and not necessarily infrastructure to take us to Kaiser.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Council. There are actually 3 projects in Antioch that are conditioned to build portions of Sand Creek Road. So you mentioned 2 of them, Promenade at Sand Creek, the Aviano project, and there's a 3rd project, the Ranch, which would build the piece from Deer Valley in front of Kaiser to connect to the Aviano piece. Those are 2 lanes of the 4. Antioch does things differently, so those are developer funded and built, so it depends on the schedule of construction for those projects.
Thank you.
Wait, can we ask her another question before she sits down? I don't want you to sit back up and down. I asked that question of the circulation plan. Do you think, I know you got a recent one, but does it match our circulation plan, what you saw in Antioch versus what we have?
In terms of the alignment of Sand Creek
Yeah,
Road?
to down to American.
Well, Sand Creek Road.
Not Sand Creek, but the
Hydorn?
Hairdorn Ranch, yeah.
So the connection between Hydorn and Balfour and American aren't in the city of Antioch. It's through the unincorporated.
There's a tiny part, isn't there?
Hillcrest. It's Hillcrest.
Sorry,
It's
Hillcrest.
Hillcrest. It's not
Oh, sorry,
Hydorn.
sorry.
Yeah. And Hillcrest, that connection may or may not be made. It's shown in the circulation element, if I recall, as sort of a dotted line, like it could happen.
Okay.
But Hydorn does not go all the way. There's
No, sorry,
topography
yeah, I
and
kept saying
other
the wrong one.
issues.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comments or questions?
I want to say thank you to staff. I know I had a lot of questions about the history, and we get peppered with a lot of questions, and it's better if we come prepared to these meetings, because I think it diffuses a lot of the misconceptions that might be talked about projects. So thank you so much for doing that. I know I can be demanding, but I really, really appreciate it. And again, like Councilmember Mary said, we've been talking about PA1 as long as I can remember. And so to have that part of Sand Creek done and have different investors start looking at building projects in that area, PA1 is pretty exciting. We complain that things take a long time. So let's do it. Let's get it done. Let's stop talking about it, and let's hopefully make it come to fruition sooner than later. And this is already a couple years sooner than we thought it was going to happen. So that's great.
Any other questions or comments from council? No? Okay. I'll now consider a motion.
Make a motion as detailed in the staff report, adopt a resolution amending the CIP budget for the Sand Creek Road Extension Project and amending the operating budget.
I'll second that.
I got a first and a second. Margaret, can we do a roll call vote? Is that okay? Or an item like this, or
You can just do the aye.
you want to just do the ayes, or all opposed? Okay. All those in the ayes?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, none. Okay. F2. Item F2 pertains to the city up-and-coming strategic plan. City Manager Tim Ogden and Finance Director Carrie Breen will now present on this item.
Vice Mayor and Council, this is a very exciting event to start discussing our strategic plan. As you know, we've been working on one for the last 2 years, and we'll give you an update tonight on where we stand with those initiatives to date. But this is an opportunity for you to craft and create your own for the next 2 years. So this is the brief agenda. We'll give you a financial capacity overview, and I'll turn it over to Carrie Breen, the Finance Director, to give you an update on our fund balances, our 10-year fiscal model, some additional one-time monies that could be available, some ongoing monies that could be available, as well as discuss the American Rescue Plan Act funding that's also available that we need to at some point decide how we want to spend those funds. Then I'll take it back over and provide you an update on our current strategic plan initiatives, the status to date, what's been completed, what may need to roll over into future fiscal years. And then we'll briefly introduce some recommended initiatives that staff have come up with as we've been considering what are some mandatory initiatives that need to be considered, what are some best practices, and also as we've tried to hear your concerns and your requests, your interests over the last year, try to identify some additional ones as well. And then we'll open it up to you to suggest any by title and brief description of what you'd like to have considered at our December 1st workshop. And this is an all-day event. We'll start at, I believe it's 8:30 and go to at least 5, or as long as you'd like, and can provide you a lot more detail on those proposed initiatives and then get you to help prioritize those for us, and then we'll come back and give you updates on what that may cost, how long it may take, any personnel needs to accomplish those things. And I'll just jump out of order a little bit. When we get to that point, I think what will work well, we have a current procedure that says if you want to ask for a future agenda item, you bring it up on an agenda, and the next meeting you discuss it and then get consensus to direct staff. So try to be a little more efficient tonight. If you have a potential initiative you'd like us to discuss on December 1st, we'll invite the Vice Mayor to then do kind of a roll call and make sure we've got at least 2 other votes to say, yes, let's discuss that on December 1st. Let's not waste time talking about, do we want to talk about it? Let's add it to that December 1st agenda, and we can talk through those potential initiatives. And if there's consensus, we'll move forward on it. If there isn't, then that's enough council direction to say, don't waste time on December 1st talking about that initiative. And then to keep...
Is that from the list in the packet or anything new?
Anything above and beyond that as well.
Above and beyond. Okay,
correct.
thank you.
And then also on December 1st, if there's additional initiatives that you want to consider, we may not have as much staff time to prepare for it, but if there's an opportune time and you think of additional ones on December 1st, I think it's appropriate to bring those up then, and we can certainly talk about those and see if they can be included going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carrie.
All right, thank you, Tim, and good evening, Vice Mayor and City Council members. As Tim mentioned, this evening I'll present you with the city's financial capacity. Additional detail on this topic can also be found in the financial capacity memo included in tonight's agenda packet. So the strategic plan financial capacity includes the most current fiscal information available and was prepared in compliance with City Council financial policies. These policies include maintaining the 30% general fund reserve and continuing to reduce pension and retiree medical unfunded obligations. This financial capacity analysis also reserves sufficient funding to allow the city to maintain excellent service levels to the community. Please note that the financial capacity figures represent the maximum amount which could be available. In deliberating the amount of financial capacity to spend, staff recommends that consideration be given to balancing strategic planning funding allocations with future budgeting needs. Any unspent funds could be allocated in the next operating budget, utilized at a later time, or remain unallocated, providing additional options and flexibility down the road. There are 3 main funding sources for the financial capacity that we're going to talk about tonight. These are the general fund, which includes the recently completed bond refinance, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, and other restricted funds. I will talk in more detail about each of these sources in the next few slides. The other key aspect to consider as we look at the financial capacity is the allocation and possible conversion of ongoing financial resources into one-time project dollars. The city maintains a 10-year general fund fiscal model to assist in budgeting and long-term financial planning. The fiscal model conservatively projects revenue and development growth and compares revenues to the projected expense obligations of the city. When we last looked at the general fund fiscal model in the spring, the impacts of labor negotiations were forecast to result in average deficits of around $500,000 to $750,000 a year, a number that is manageable for the city. Minor projected annual deficits are managed through the planned use of the Budget Stabilization Fund, which will offset pension and retiree medical costs over the next decade. Those costs decline over the longer term and ultimately eliminate the need for the Budget Stabilization Fund. The updated fiscal model now projects revenues exceeding expenses by an annual average of about $500,000 a year over the next 10 years, resulting in an annual maximum funding capacity of about $1 million in the general fund. While increasing revenues, primarily property sales and business license taxes, provided some additional capacity, the largest change to the long-term forecast has come from a reduction in projected pension and retiree medical costs. Both CalPERS and the city's OPEB, or Retiree Medical Trust, earned investment returns in excess of 20% last year, and while neither plan is fully funded, the gains have reduced the unfunded obligations which need to be paid off in future years. While these savings are substantial, I would caution that these new estimates are just a measurement at a point in time. If CalPERS or the OPEB trust do not average near 7% returns on a go-forward basis, or if CalPERS reduces the discount rate, the contribution requirements will go up. For planning purposes, the fiscal model also includes several cost placeholders for future expenditure needs. By including these items in the forecast, the city will be able to fund them in the future without having to find available resources at that time. These general fund cost items include $400,000 a year for the staffing, landscaping, and maintenance costs associated with the planned vineyards at Marsh Creek Amphitheater, $100,000 per year for unplanned capital outlay or special study needs, continued operational funding of the tech center at current levels, which is empty, nobody in there currently, increased technology replacement set-asides, and finally $750,000 a year for new staffing needs. Again, these are cost placeholders and have not been considered or approved by the City Council, but are included in the projections just for financial planning purposes. Finally, as a reminder, the fiscal model is conservative and does not include potential revenues from development of the Innovation Center at Brentwood or from future uncertain commercial or retail development. Historically, the city's financial results have been better than what has been projected in the fiscal model as a result. Okay, moving on to the bond refinance. Last week, the city closed on the bond refinance, which will provide spending capacity of $266,000 per year for 10 years. These funds are in addition to the general fund fiscal model capacity of $1 million per year. Since these funds are guaranteed, as opposed to the fiscal model surplus, which changes with economic conditions, it would not be difficult to utilize the budget stabilization fund to convert the $266,000 into $2.66 million in project dollars if the City Council so desires. The bond refinance funds can be utilized for any operational project need, similar to the general fund. And speaking of the budget stabilization fund, we had a balance of $18.2 million as of June 30, 2021. Of this amount, $3.5 million has been used to further pay down unfunded pension obligations, leaving a current balance of $14.7 million. With the fiscal model currently showing a surplus, these funds are not projected to be used over the 10-year period. As I mentioned a moment ago, the budget stabilization fund could provide internal funding flexibility for immediate project use. So in summary, we project annual average general fund capacity of up to a maximum of $1 million plus the bond refinance dollars. And again, a portion of the projected surplus could go unspent and or reserved for future budget or operational needs outside of the strategic plan. Okay, switching gears now to the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. ARPA was signed into law earlier this year by the U.S. Congress as a $1.9 trillion economic relief package in response to the financial impacts of the pandemic. Included in ARPA is $350 billion in direct aid to local governments. The city, for its part, will receive $6.9 million in total. Half of this has already been received, and the other half is coming in mid-2022. In May of this year, the U.S. Treasury published an interim final rule governing the use of the funds. While we are still waiting for final guidance from Treasury, staff is recommending proceeding with spending allocations based on assurances from Treasury that agencies can rely on the interim final rule for spending decisions, and the rules will not be retroactively changed. Any decisions made under the current rules will be allowed under the final. Funds must be spent or obligated by December 31st, 2024. Although staff's recommendation to utilize the funds under the revenue loss provision has not changed, I will quickly summarize the 4 allowable spending categories for your consideration. Further details on these categories are included in the memo in the agenda packet. So the first category is revenue loss. This is intended to replace governmental lost revenue due to the pandemic and is the most flexible category. Quoting from the Treasury, uses can include but are not limited to governmental services, which includes maintenance of infrastructure, pay-go spending for building new infrastructure, including roads, modernization of cybersecurity, including hardware, software, protection of critical infrastructure, health services, environmental remediation, school or educational services, and the provision of police, fire, and other public safety services. Essentially, if it's something that is provided by a city government, it's going to be allowed under the revenue loss category. Moving on to the second category, public health and economic impacts. This is defined by the Treasury as assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or to provide aid to impacted businesses such as tourism, travel, or hospitality. These next few categories do get more restrictive, and there does have to be a tie-in to impacts from the pandemic. The third eligible spending category is premium pay. This allows for payments to eligible workers performing essential work during the pandemic. And this would include other businesses too. This is not necessarily the city. This would be if the city were to grant funds, they could do that to other businesses to then offer premium pay. The fourth and final category is infrastructure, which the Treasury defines as making necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Again, in summary, staff recommends spending the $6.9 million in ARPA funds under the most flexible option, which would be the revenue loss provision. Okay, moving on to the third and final funding source for the financial capacity. This comes from other restricted city funds. So the City Council may wish to include these funding sources in the strategic plan if there are desired projects which meet the restrictions on the use of the funds. The funds mentioned tonight are being presented for completeness of the financial capacity picture, not necessarily in anticipation of having any associated strategic initiatives with them. First, we have Parks Development Impact Fees. These are fees collected from new development to provide for the acquisition and development of parks and amenities. The projected available balance for the 2-year strategic plan period is approximately $4.6 million. We also have agricultural land funds. Again, the city collects these fees from new developments. The municipal code allows for the funds to be used for conservation easements or purchases of certain real property. In addition, the funds may be expended on agricultural preservation and enterprise programs. The projected available balance for the 2-year strategic plan period, setting aside funds that are already budgeted for the agricultural business program, is approximately $2.3 million. Spending a significant portion of these funds could impact the ability to continue the ag business programs, however. So that's something we'd want to look at if we go down this path. Public art acquisition fees are collected from new development for the acquisition and construction of public art. The projected available balance for the 2-year period here is about $3.1 million. And finally, we have facilities replacement. The city annually sets aside funds to prepare for major city-owned building repairs or replacement. A portion of the balance in this fund could be a source of funding for improvements to city facilities, depending on the scope and nature of the project. Okay, so now that we have covered the 3 main sources of financial capacity, again, that was general fund, which included those bond refinance dollars, ARPA, and then the restricted funds. I'd like to talk a little bit about how a portion of the annual capacity could be used to advance a one-time project. As you recall, the general fund had $1 million in annual financial capacity, plus $266,000 on the bond refinance. The City Council may wish to convert a portion of this ongoing funding into one-time project dollars rather than have to save up the dollars for 10 years and do something. So this can be easily accomplished with guaranteed resources, as I mentioned before, with the bond refinance, where we know the amount is guaranteed. In this case, the city could simply utilize $2.66 million of the budget stabilization fund as a loan for the project, and then just allocate the $266,000 bond savings back to the stabilization fund and just pay it off over the 10 years. It's also relatively easy to do this with projected short-term surpluses. As an example, the City Council could decide to take 2 years of surplus, or $2 million, and put that entire amount towards a project. The Budget Stabilization Fund could again provide the funds today, and then in the budget, we would budget for a $1 million transfer back using that surplus in the next operating budget. The concept could be expanded to bring forward projected surpluses from even more years. However, staff would recommend being much more cautious with this, since, as discussed, these surpluses are not guaranteed and can change quickly during economic cycles or if CalPERS lowers the discount rate. If the City Council desired project dollars in excess of what is readily available, it could consider a bond issuance. The city does have an excellent credit rating, and it would be able to access the credit markets. As an example, the city could generate approximately $10 million for projects with a $500,000 annual debt service payments. Finally, if the City Council wished to fund projects with costs well beyond that amount, it could consider a revenue enhancement such as a sales tax measure. For example, a quarter-cent sales tax measure would generate approximately $2.5 million in annual revenue. This revenue could be partially bonded against to generate over $35 million for projects, while still leaving $600,000 per year of that sales tax behind to staff or support the new amenities, as a hypothetical. Again, I do want to reiterate that all of these financing concepts are for informational purposes at this point and intended to give the City Council a full menu of options, and these would only be pursued more fully and vetted at the further direction of the City Council. Okay, summary. So in total, we have a combined $1.27 million of general fund / bond refinance dollars. So these are dollars that are freely available, no restrictions on these. And the council may wish to convert a portion of these to one-time project dollars as opposed to waiting to accumulate funds. Through the American Rescue Plan, we have $6.9 million in one-time funds, which are flexible if used under the revenue loss allowance. The city has restricted funds, which could help fund strategic initiatives that fall within the allowable use of those funds. And finally, there are options to generate additional project dollars if the City Council desires, ranging from internal borrowing up to a bond issuance or revenue enhancement. This concludes the financial capacity portion of tonight's presentation. And before the city manager continues with the rest of his presentation, if the council would like, we could pause here and take any questions you may have so far.
The 266,000 a year, those you feel comfortable with preloading them into year one, but the other $1 million is where you're saying you would only go out a couple of years, only commit to $2 million and then kind of do a rolling balance on that one?
Yes, Councilmember Mendoza, that would be my recommendation. I mean, certainly if the council felt more aggressive, they could bring more forward. But in terms of safety, like, do we have the dollars? I think one of your questions earlier, do we have the dollars, or are we relying on future things to happen? We have the 266 for sure. So in essence, we have the 2.67 million because that's going to happen. We're fairly confident now in our projections for this year and the next year. The $1 million, that's pretty good. As you go out a little further, recession, discount rate, things change, things happen. So it's hard to say, 5 years from now, yes, we've got $1 million, let's go use it today. So there's where we get a little more cautious. Maybe you use a portion of it, maybe you don't use any of it, but that's where the $2 million came from. Is 2 years is a good, we're pretty comfortable with that. And then it gets a little bit less comfortable as you go out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I've got several questions. Regarding the strategic plan financial capacity, I attended the CalPERS Asset Liability Management webinar last month, and based on what I heard during the webinar, It did appear that they were leaning towards reducing the discount rate rather than passing on the windfall in returns they realized last year. Shouldn't we wait to see what CalPERS is going to do before making any plans?
Yes, that's a really good question, Councilmember Rary, because the discount rate, one of the biggest factors I mentioned in why we have a surplus is because CalPERS earned 21% last year and our OPEB trust earned 27% last year. And so any changes that happen in those funds impact the funds that we're going to have available in the future years. They're really not going to change these next couple of years again. This is where the 2 years look good. But if CalPERS does drop the discount rate beyond what they were at 7%. Through their investment earnings, their risk mitigation strategy, they'll be dropping it to 6.8%. That's the recommendation. There's talk of them going to 6.5. The numbers before you tonight are all using that 6.8. So they do have a reduction of the discount rate down to 6.8, which is what the common thought is that they're going to go with. If they go to 6.5, we will find out about this next week. CalPERS board is meeting for 3 days next week to talk about this. And if they drop it below 6.8, that's going to change the numbers here that I provided. Again, not the first couple of years. It's going to change the last 7 years. And you're not going to have $1 million per year. You may have a couple $100,000 per year in those out years. So we certainly tonight, we don't need to make, the city council doesn't need to make any funding decisions, make any commitments short of just saying these are our priorities and staff, please go back and find a way to fund what we can. When we come back in December, we'll know what has happened with CalPERS. I'm assuming we'll know as long as they don't punt that off, and we'll make any adjustments at that time. But yes, it does impact us quite a bit.
Okay. And the fiscal model projects projects that the balance increasing to $16 million over the next 10 years. And wasn't it not too long ago that the fiscal model actually showed that by year 10, we would nearly deplete the budget stabilization fund? Why such a change?
Yeah, so again, that's true and accurate. And it's one of the key things of the fiscal model to keep in mind is when something happens in year 1 or 2 and it repeats itself, it causes a significant impact to the ending number. So in this case, we've added maybe $600,000 or $700,000 in sales tax and a couple $100,000 in property tax. Say $900,000 a year. That's great, but when you look at that over 10 years and it compounds because the $900,000 then grows with inflationary pressures, you add all that up and it becomes $10, $11 million over the course of 10 years. That's how quickly these things change, which is one reason why when we look at the fiscal model, and I hate to keep coming back to the analogy, but those first couple of years we feel good about, but then when you get out in year 7, something changes today and it's a $500,000 change, it'll be $5 million by year 7 if we don't adjust for it in the budget, if we don't make some changes. So that's one of the things. If things do change in the fiscal model, we obviously change our practices. If they go down, we'll adjust the budget, we'll make necessary reductions. That's what it's intended to do to make sure we're on the right track. Here, we had improving revenues, we had expenses that went down, and those two put together was over $1 million a year, which then multiplied by 10 is why we have so much left in the budget stabilization fund. So good news all around, but it just highlights how fast it changes.
And I apologize on not getting this question to you ahead of time, but I think it was said in the Ag Land Fund that there was, I think, 2.9 million. I didn't scroll through and find it fast enough. 2.8? Okay, well, I was pretty close. Isn't it true that over the next, to build out, that we're probably looking at another 7 million that will be added into that Ag Land Fund?
So I don't have that in front. I would have to do the quick math on that.
And I apologize for not getting you back to that.
I don't know the fee offhand, so I can't do the quick math in my head. I'd have to look up what the per unit fee is and then do some math on that. I could, while the discussion's ongoing, I can try to take a look at that.
Yeah, because it's not just this. I mean, the funds for the art as well will increase over the years. So this isn't like this. These numbers are all that we have, and if we spend it, it's gone. That we will continue to build on all of those funds until build out, because each unit that's built has to pay into those funds. So I just, for the new council members. I wanted them to be aware that this isn't all the funds. This is what we have available right now. But it doesn't mean that if we do something with those funds that we deplete it and then there's no more.
That's correct, and it goes back to what Councilmember Mendoza had said. These are funds in the bank right now, so we're not relying on any new development. As development occurs, more funds will come in, as with any of our development fees. Yes, I'm still looking up the number for you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Regarding the agricultural land fund and the 2.8 million, in the staff report it said use of funds may impact ability to fund annual ag enterprise programs in the future. Is that to restrict double dipping? Is that a restriction so that the monies don't come from two places for the same purpose? What are the restrictions around that?
So we currently fund, about 20 to 30,000 a year for ag. So Harvest Time in Brentwood, I think, is the main one that comes out of there. And my intent on that, and I should have been a little more clear, is if you were to say, oh, we have 2.3, let's use 2.3, then you are relying on some future development to ensure you could continue to supply the funds to something like a Harvest Time in Brentwood. So that the other funds don't necessarily have a component that is actively being used. Like parks, we don't have somebody drawing from the parks. We do on the ag, and so I wanted to bring that up. It is a small amount, so you'd probably want to leave a little bit. If there was a planned project, you'd want to leave some amount in there so that if the council desired to continue funding the Harvest Time through there, it could do so.
But isn't that for the map? Are you talking about the maps that were the grant? So that is no longer being funded under the ag enterprise funds. It's now being funded as a priority funding for the economic development, and we changed that over about a year and a half ago, so that it's all coming out of the economic development grants versus out of the ag funding, because we knew somewhere down the line that we would run out of the ag funds, and so that's why we changed it over to that. So
and that's kind of what my question was, as far as like the development feeding into that once we don't have that option anymore. Where would that money, where would those funds come from? I guess you just answered that. Thank you. That was it for me. They asked really good questions.
No other questions? Okay, at this time, if there are no other questions from council, the public comment period is now open.
This was just a break in the presentations. We haven't finished the presentation.
I'm sorry.
But I was going to recommend if we want to take a 5-minute break, if council's interested in that.
That'd be great.
The city manager, Tim Ogden, was going to finish the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Well, appreciate Carrie putting together that financial update. And again, the point was to give you a good foundation tonight so you can be thinking about it and following up with questions before our December 1st workshop, where now you have to assign how those funds can be used. So what I'll discuss now is the current strategic plan that's been in place. Just about 2 years ago, it was conceptualized, and we still have through July to finish anything up. We have our 6 focus areas, and I'll show you through this presentation a slight change to some of the categories. But infrastructure, public safety, economic development, land use planning, community and neighborhood services, and fiscal stability and operational management. So what I'd like to do now is switch over to the current strategic plan and just walk you through somewhat briefly, and then follow up with any questions you may have about our current strategic plan as a foundation before I move on to the next set of strategic plan initiatives. So for Focus Area 1, infrastructure, we talk about transportation and our utilities, our wet utilities. We've made some great progress, including tonight, on the extension of Sand Creek Road. Still quite a bit of work yet ahead of us, but it's moving in the right direction. The East County Integrated Transit Study, a regional study looking at how regional transit works. That study will likely be out publicly soon, and you'll be able to see that first of next year. State Route 239, Councilman Rary, you already gave us a little update on that, so we're paying very close attention to that, and we know several of our residents are commuters and heading that direction, so obviously a great relief to the traffic congestion. And then improvements to Lone Tree Way. We have an agenda item coming to you in December to assist with the school district on a planned school. Some more information will be coming on that very shortly. Related to our wet utilities, the wastewater treatment plant, I believe something like a $40 million, $50 million, $60 million dollar project is underway. And if you haven't had a chance to come out to our Municipal Services Center, we invite you to come take a tour and come see the progress of that construction project. It's massive. Focus Area 2 is public safety. There was a goal to hire 2 additional police dispatchers, now to get up to a total of 12 full-time employees, and that is now complete. The 5th beat, something to celebrate about as we increase additional police officers on the beat and enhance that new patrol area. Recruitment is still underway. Some challenges there, a little bit with recruitment and then training, and we can give you more updates later as well. For the future build-out, making sure we have the right technology and operational effectiveness. And we have 2 brief updates. One is we've purchased drones, and they're currently in use. And then the Military Intelligence Liaison Officer, the Milo system, is a technology, virtual reality concept to train our officers. And at some point, we're going to open that up to tours to the public to see how that training works and get a little better sensitivity to what some of the daily routine and challenges of law enforcement is. With the fire station property transfer swap that you authorized first of this year, there's still a plan for a substation at that location in that new fire station, the headquarters, that's being planned.
Before we move on that one, being that the consolidation, do we know that, well, and I guess we have to wait until the consolidation is over, but are we sure that we've got a station going in there? And
I'll answer briefly. It's in the transfer documents, and so they're obligated, whether it's them or their successor, to do it, but go ahead. You just have to really get close.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and members of council. I spoke to Chief Helmick about 10, 12 days ago regarding this issue, and he reached out to Confire and explained where we were, and they're on board with that. So that's the last I heard.
Okay. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure, because if they chose not to build a station there, especially since they don't need an admin building there, that I knew that the property reverts back. We had the first opportunity to purchase it back for the amount we sold it for. What was it, $1 or $2 or whatever it was. So I just wanted to make sure that this is still something that is moving forward. Thanks.
And if perchance it isn't in the plan somehow, I think we're still interested in finding a substation on that side of town. And then the fourth goal was to transfer the fire station property, and that has since been completed. As well as supporting all the financial strategies. You authorized part of that again tonight with those fire CFDs and any future development being annexed therein, as well as the support you've done for Measure X. There is a little update, I believe November 16th, the Board of Supervisors are planning to then consider how to spend Measure X funds. So again, we encourage the residents to get involved and advocate for that. Focus Area 3, Economic Development, quite a few items. You're familiar with the specific plan updates both for downtown and the Brentwood Boulevard, had several community meetings and workshops. You recently approved the resolution of intent to form the Public Financing Authority for the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, and we're currently out for recruitment for those potential, what do we call them, commissioners or committee members? Commissioners. And I believe that recruitment will go through the end of the year, and you'll have an opportunity to appoint them probably in January. The beautification program, as you already heard tonight, a grant program is underway, and those approvals that were considered at the Land Use and Development, Economic Development Committee will be coming to the council, I believe it's the December 14th or 20th meeting. The Downtown Main Street certification is underway. Earlier this year, you funded them through the program that would enable them to hire an executive director and look for office space that are two major qualifiers to get that certification. And a brief update, they are working to make an offer now to an executive director who's got some great experience, and I believe they'll be announcing that in the next week or two. Still looking for a dedicated office space, though. Again, the Brentwood Boulevard specific plan, I mentioned that. The Economic Development Incentive Policy, you approved a policy. We have that. We've been flexing it with potential prospects, but as far as I understand, we haven't had any offers of interest just yet. Again, trying to maximize tax revenue and new investment in local jobs here in the city. So we do have some tools in the toolbox. It's just, again, just aligning it with the right prospects, and as Councilman Rary mentioned, having shovel-ready locations is critical to making that happen quicker. We're aware of a few prospects that have already passed us by because things weren't quite ready. The Economic Development Action Plan has a list of items, and I won't go into that right now, but those are still kind of ongoing. Several of those will probably just become annual budget expenditures and not initiatives per se. Marketing materials to tailor to specific industries and sectors. That's kind of an ongoing effort, but we are planning to come back to in December, I believe it's the 14th meeting or 20th. All things about Innovation Center at Brentwood, with a marketing consultant contract award to continue the branding and marketing of that project.
I thought, you know, this has kind of confused me because I was sure that part of this master planner was to create, not only create that marketing materials, but also, I mean, one of the things that they listed was their real estate firms that they have attached to their things. So why is it that we're needing to go out for proposal for new things that was supposed to be part of the original contract?
It's just a matter of scope is a little bit different. So there was a little bit of overlap. And if Margaret, if you could promote Josh, he can give a little more detail to that question. And we'll obviously have a lot more detail when we bring that contract to you, and we'll give a little background history on the whole Innovation Center at Brentwood, from master plan to specific plan to this marketing and branding plan, and now the infrastructure coming shortly, tying it all together and moving it forward quicker than we have. So if Josh, if you could respond to a little bit more about the difference in the scopes from ELS to the proposed vendor, that would be much appreciated.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Sorry, a little bit of feedback. Josh Ewan, Senior Analyst with Economic Development. Vice Mayor, council members, thank you. Councilmember Rary, it's a very good question. The original scope that we used for the master plan, really, the overall process with that is a marketing tool. And so it's really created your intended vision that we received an approval back in May of 2021 that we'll be using for the updated specific plan. In that, we work with RSN Design as a subconsultant and we prepared a brochure and a landing page that probably needs a little bit more of a market-ready approach. So the firm that we're considering at this point, which we'd come back to on December 14th, would be really about pushing the content out. So really giving us something that's turnkey that we could, what we see is probably your social media, LinkedIn, advertising, as well as going out and really getting the material in front of various trade publications like Silicon Valley Business Journal or San Francisco Business Times, in addition to other avenues, as well as possibly setting up a little bit more of a developer friendly or end user friendly website, or at least a landing page to help elevate the brand not only of Brentwood but also the Innovation Center. So we'll have more information for you on December 14th to review and potentially approve that contract.
Is there a reduction in costs since the other company is not taking this over?
Well, the original scope wasn't going to be a full marketing package. It only got us to a certain point. And so what we'll be asking the council to consider is something that helps boost and gets us to the market a little bit more succinct and in a professional light. So we'll be able to review that with you. We do have the current firm ELS as available to us on retainer. We have a very minor amount of money left over, and we're using them to help facilitate the specific plan text amendments that will be coming to you as well. In addition, we can work with that designer on this new marketing push if we need to update material specific to certain industries.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. So when we come back on December 14th, we'll go back and give a little more history about what the original scope was with the ELS and how the scope maybe differs and gets into more detail, and so that hopefully that's clearer then. I mentioned the citywide beautification program, those grants that will be coming back to you. Focus area 4, land use planning. Primarily the primary goal here was the housing element, and you recently approved a contract for that, and we'll be providing a detailed schedule of what that rollout will look like shortly, including all the community workshops and then all the special meetings that would probably need to be held through early next spring. Focus area 5, community and neighborhood services. Quite a laundry list here, and so I'll go through these fairly quickly, but we had 2 major categories of short-term high priority programming, and then we had develop a plan to implement long-term high priority ones, and these ones really require significant revenues that weren't currently available. So based on the short-term initiatives, the shade at our parks is an ongoing program. We're making it a condition of any new parks going forward, and then as financial capacity is there, we'll add it to any other parks. The 9-hole disc golf course has been installed. Many of you were there at the ribbon cutting. The Brentwood Education and Technology Center that's now empty. You authorized us to do a conceptual design study for a youth center, and we will be coming back at your meeting next week to have you consider accepting a report of that conceptual study, and then we'll talk about it in detail on December 1st at the strategic plan workshop.
C doesn't actually talk about the conceptual design. It's an assess of feasibility for a dedicated youth center, which is something I've asked for since this first came up, because as I pointed out back then, I'm not against a youth center, but how can we design and look at a youth center without knowing how much it's going to cost us to run it on a continual basis? I mean, I think we had up to $750,000 a year that it would cost us to run it if the city ran it. And so C is not in progress because we haven't assessed the feasibility for a dedicated youth center. The other thing was that you have down there is the conceptual design. It's not the feasibility study, so that is inaccurate when you have it in progress. And I still, you know, we haven't gone out. I mean, we haven't gotten somebody to do a feasibility study yet. So how can we move forward, even in our 2-year strategic plan, without knowing those costs.
Sure. I think the report, once you get to see it, it'll describe more fully what I think you're envisioning. So in order to come up with what the programming could look like, needed to assess the facility itself first and see what the capacity could be, what the cost would be to renovate it, upgrade it to the current building code standards, et cetera, and then come back and look what programming space could look like. So really incrementally saying, does that even work? What's it going to cost? And you'll see those cost estimates. We're hoping to publish next Tuesday's agenda tomorrow, if we can get it all done in time before the holiday, so you actually have a few extra days before next week to look at that report. And then on December 1st, we'll have a very, very detailed presentation outlining what that feasibility might look like. But I think what you're alluding to, we're not prepared with that piece yet. What is it going to cost to run it? We don't have that configured yet. We didn't want to spend any more time until we knew if this is really the direction of the council at this point.
But how do we know what the direction of the council is if we don't know how much it's going to cost us to do it?
Sure. Any other questions on that? Okay. The next one was the restrooms to several parks. Let's see, what was the Creekside and Garin Park? Those are in progress, those CIPs, and I don't have a whole lot more details on that, but we can give you more if you have questions on it. Adding hours to Sunset Park is looking to be completed by the end of this fiscal year. For trail improvements, I've seen some of those around town already, but we have the Parks and Rec Ad Hoc Committee, which is looking at doing more of that project, and they'll be discussing it at future meetings this fiscal year. And then for the pickleball courts, staff is looking at a conceptual plan to locate those at Creekside Park, and we'll be coming back with a design consultant to get those plans out to bid. Bruce, I don't think we're planning to have that done by June 30th. No, okay. So that may be one of those initiatives that rolls forward, but it's in progress. And then for the coming up with plans to implement these long-term ones, and we've heard about this already tonight in some of the public comments, but the Sand Creek Park sports facility. And let me scroll down here for the updates. So all of these are currently unfunded and need additional resources to move forward, and that's something that will be a top priority to talk about at the strategic plan workshop. C was the Brentwood Senior Activity Center, was considered a long-term project, but the council at the time moved it forward, and we included it in the scope of work for that conceptual feasibility study, and they've completed that as well, and so that report will come out tomorrow to the public. And we also have an ad hoc committee meeting with the two members to talk that further in detail. And then let's see, 6 miles of trail connections. We've got over 2,300 linear feet of trail are currently in the process of being constructed with new development. So making great strides in that effort. The Vineyards Amphitheater, again, most of you have been participating in those community meetings. They're working on the 30% design build process, and CEQA analysis will need to continue at some point. So I believe we're scheduled to come back to you first of the year with an update and get some more direction from you on that. But a very exciting project. And then the fourth category was talking about adaptive recreation and looking at our program fee policies. We've retained a consultant who's looking at all of the programming, and a report will be available early next year. And then the fee policy, again, we'll be planning to come back before the end of the year as well. So quite a few action items. And in fairness to Parks and Rec, that was one of the departments that got cut the most during the recession of this pandemic. And so a lot of these initiatives didn't move it at all for about a year, and so many of them are still catching up. But they've got a lot on their plate as well. And then kind of a catch-all category of fiscal stability and operational management. We have the citywide workforce training and development opportunities for the diversity and inclusion program and an internship. So with the diversity and inclusion programming, the city has established a policy and established an internal staff committee, and they meet monthly, and come up with initiatives. They've been doing a lot of the social media postings, bringing more awareness to these topics, and individuals in various industries who've been a great role model in this effort. Much more would like to be done, and again, the pandemic kind of stalled some of those efforts a little bit. And then for the internship program, definitely was put on hold because of the pandemic restrictions. We weren't even in City Hall for a lot of the year, and then to bring in interns just didn't make sense. So we're looking forward to initiating that as soon as it's more appropriate and feasible. And I could see that early next year being feasible. In fact, we're already hearing from some teachers saying, please give my students some work experience. And so we're looking forward to putting that together. Related to technology, we've been working on an information technology master plan and had an executive retreat going through, I don't know, was there like 100 different potential projects, prioritizing them based on city needs. And that project will be coming before you in next spring. Creating an online dynamic citywide performance report. We put together a performance report, and we have not advertised it well, and so that's something that we've discussed with Weblative to probably relaunch and get more community clicking through it and seeing all of the different metrics and progress of how each department's doing, getting a better understanding of their workload, and showcase it in a nice aesthetic format. And that's supposed to be updated automatically for the most part.
Some of that, when I was going through it, it would have been nice to have links to things for the public and even myself to see what do these specifically mean. I mean, some of it was difficult to know what it was really about. So if possible, if we can look at that, I mean, for those within the city, it may be, oh yeah, well, we completely understand it, but when the public's looking at it, they look at it from a different viewpoint, and I think we need to make it user-friendly.
Great point. Great point. Yeah, we had transition with the PIO who left, and we had to quickly just kind of finish it up with what we had left and launched it. But in hindsight, we probably need to make it a little more user-friendly and layman's terms in so many ways. So that's definitely something. As soon as we have a few more resources, we'll make an earnest effort to upgrade that.
And probably not do the big rollout on it until those things are done.
Correct. Very good. Goal 3 had several items. The redistricting process I mentioned earlier, we're reaching out to the community in several different ways. December 2nd, we'll have a comprehensive staff report for the Redistricting Commission showing all of the different outreach areas that have been done. And looking forward to seeing the community participate more fully and give us their feedback on what kind of communities should stay together in a district and what those potential maps could look like. The Community Champion program that was to reach out to our Hispanic community specifically has been put on hold for now with the loss of our PIO. And the newsletter also, we put out a few additions that were a work in progress, and that has also since stalled. We were hoping to start that by the first of the year. And we had one project that when we came back to you, when we put more than half of these on hold and then came back and got those restored, I believe, was it July maybe? Maybe it was earlier than that. This is one that we didn't restore. This is the parking management plan, a comprehensive plan. Some of the implementing measures in it were done. Some have not been done. One, just for example, was the wayfinding signage. Hasn't been completely done yet. The putting in parking meters downtown was not well received by the downtown businesses. So that may be something we're going to recommend not moving forward with and have implemented that plan as much as we want to at this point.
Didn't we say not to do the wayfinding signs? We took that $100,000 for the beautification outside of downtown? Yeah, I think we killed that, didn't we?
There's a CIP that's still in existence that relates to it in some way, but I don't know if I have all the best information on that.
I mean, just when it comes up, like, I thought we had killed it, but I mean, if it was more than $100,000, then maybe there's more to it than just the signage, which was $100,000.
That sounds familiar.
Okay.
I thought I saw a capital improvement project that still shows it, so we'll double check on that. So that is the current strategic plan. I guess I should open up for any questions about any of those projects. And we have staff here available to give you more details if needed. And if not, I will jump into the next initiatives. And then we'll get to public comment. So these are the recommended initiatives. Staff met for an all-day session to go through kind of strategic planning of ourselves and say, okay, what are some mandatory projects? What are some nice-to-haves? And I've tried to put those in parentheses here to kind of reflect our understanding of some of these at this point. But in focus area 1, because almost all of the infrastructure projects are all public works, we're just going to call it public works. And then this also gives a little more accountability to the department who has stewardship for these initiatives. So focus area 1 relates to public works. And I'll just briefly go through these by title, and we're going to have very detailed presentations for you on December 1. But the organics regulations compliance, we do have a capital improvement project that's unfunded that we'll want to talk about. That's a state mandate. The Innovation Center infrastructure, including Sand Creek Road Extension, which you've authorized in part tonight. We'll start moving forward on the design, and then we'll come back to you at some point to say, here's how we finish funding the potential construction of it. And then all of the wet utilities as well. We're still trying to get easements from property owners to push that through. Utility rate studies, those are done every 5 years, and we'll be soon coming up on a time to get that ready for the next 5-year cycle. I believe that's in this next 2-year time frame. The water treatment expansion is a needed project we'll want to talk through, and citywide pavement condition, making sure that we're maintaining all of our sidewalks and balancing some of the risks that we have with some trip hazards, but also then maintaining those as much as we have resources to manage.
Can I ask, are these really strategic plan initiatives? I mean, the utility rate studies is something that we have to do. I mean, in the past, our initiatives have been projects that we want to work on, things that are above and beyond what has to be done. And so the funding, you know, unless you're looking at the funding from those other things to fund these, I mean, from the different 3 categories. But, I mean, I looked through all of this, and these didn't look like strategic plan initiatives like we've done in the past. These look like a lot of them are just general, everyday type of things that we have to do as a city.
And I was wondering that, like, for example, utility rate studies and water treatment expansions, don't those come from the enterprise fund or something like that? So are those really, I mean, those are already covered. So should we have 2 budgets, like 2 buckets, things that are covered already through things like the enterprise fund, and then these projects that are additional, you know, like the ones that we're choosing? So I don't know if you look at them like that.
Well, the water treatment expansion may be something depending on if it's above and beyond what that we've currently done. And I think we do have a phase, is it phase 3 that we're going into, Mickey? The final phase for the water treatment expansion. But, you know, the others just seem like things that we have to do. So they're not, I guess they're not really the projects that we look at here. These are the great things we're going to be working on as a city. So this just seemed kind of strange looking at these.
No, your questions are the very same questions we've been asking ourselves. What qualifies as an initiative? And so we tried to think through, without any definitions previously having been identified. Is it kind of a one-time thing? Is it once every couple years? Is it a big money item that we should have an initiative? Is it a significant workload issue that should be identified as an initiative versus a day-to-day thing? So just a quick example for the citywide pavement condition, and again, a little sneak peek. We spend very little every year. We may be coming back to say, can we spend a lot more to really start getting further ahead? So that is a little bit different workload and a much bigger budget ask. So we're willing to work with the council and say, how do you want to define initiatives? but it's also to kind of respect some of these have significant workload issues so that there's a better understanding of council and staff about how much more capacity is there and how do we reprioritize if needed. So it's great questions. I don't know if we have the answers.
Yeah. So, but all of these, they'll come with like sheets like this, for example, so we'll know what parts you have funded and what
Partly.
Okay.
So December 1st, we'll have, each department's going to give their own presentation and probably take 30 to 45 minutes each. What they're going to do is just give a quick overview of what services they do, just as a quick refresher, a couple minutes on that. Then they're going to identify current workload issues of significant projects, not the day-to-day minutia, but currently, what are the current big projects that are consuming a lot of time and resources? And then go through in detail, one slide each, what is this initiative, more details on it. We don't have everything defined fully about how much it may cost, how long it may take, or how many people it may be needed to complete it. And that's an analysis that once we get your buy-in to these are the initiatives, we'll spend some time over the next few months and come back to you in February with a full analysis of people, time, and money to pull off these initiatives. And then again, you'll give us direction, say, it doesn't all fit. These are the priorities. These ones you're going to have to hold off. These can wait 2 more years, wait, right?
Okay.
So that'll be a discussion at that point.
Thank you.
Okay, to continue then. Okay, focus area 2, police services. There wants to be an additional focus on enhanced community engagement. We've gone through some challenging times nationwide with some community policing issues and want to be better engaged in the community, better connect with them. I think the Dia de los Muertos event that the police officers were involved in and had face paint on, I mean, it's a great example of how we're better engaging than we have in the past. Focus area 3, economic development. We've got a list of programs and marketing that we want to discuss. And then the downtown and Brentwood Boulevard specific plan implementation. So the current strategic plan talks about putting the specific plans together. There's a whole lot of work yet to then codify it in the zoning code and then all the action items to actually fully implement it. And how do we get that funded? That's probably going to be a multi-year process. Focus area 4, community development. So the housing element was in the prior strategic plan. It's obviously going to be a heavy workload and continue into this next strategic plan, a state mandate. General plan objective design standards. State Bill 330 has mandated that we are more objective in our design standards and less discretionary so that developers and city and have a greater clarity and understanding of what those expectations are. General plan implementation updates. This was recently mentioned by the council. How do we make sure that staff and council are holding ourselves accountable to what the general plan asks for and that implementation checklist that we send to the state? We haven't consistently been bringing it to the council, and so that's a change that we're making for sure. That's a state mandate. Conservation and open space policy implementation. We talked about that recently. And then the quarterly community development 101 sessions. We did 1 or 2 already. Want to refashion those and make sure we have presenters that are a little more engaging, but continue to educate the community on what restrictions that you are learning about and finding that sometimes make it very difficult to have the local land use control that we really would like to have. Hopefully the initiative moves forward to give us more of that control, and so continue to educate the community on the rules that we have to follow. Focus area 5, Parks and Recreation Services, the amphitheater project. This is a development agreement mandate of sorts. We're still moving, as I mentioned earlier, the 30% design, so coming back to you for full construction and approvals of getting that out to bid. And then managing that. Are we going to manage that as city staff? Are we going to outsource that to a vendor to manage it for us? Some decisions to make in the next fiscal year. Senior center expansion, youth center development, Sand Creek Sports Park financing plan. You know, there's an estimated cost of something 20 million plus. So how do we finance that? Carrie outlined a couple different options that we can discuss on December 1st. The park near the Amber Lane Apartments, that was recently brought up. We heard there's some fund balance in the park development account, so that maybe there's some opportunities there. The 4th of July firework event, Councilmember Rare, you brought that up a few months ago to ask to be considered. Vice Mayor Rodriguez brought the skate park hours and lighting, so we'll discuss that, what some potential costs would be, potential impacts of doing that to the neighborhood, et cetera. And then several other current initiatives that we just highlighted that may need to roll forward. In focus area 6 for fiscal sustainability and operational management, per the MOUs that was negotiated, a classification and compensation study is in there. We've recognized that we have several classifications that aren't all aligning. Some people are managing lots of people in programs and others aren't doing any, and the salaries aren't quite appropriate. So looking at all that and making sure that we're able to fully retain and recruit talent here. A secured document conversion, this comes with a little bit of a price tag, but making sure that we can more effectively respond to Public Records Act requests. Margaret, can you just tell us a recent one that you submitted, how many pages were submitted, and rough estimate of how many hours it took manually to do that? Just for an example.
I'm not sure I could go into how many hours. It was multiple people over probably weeks.
Yeah.
And I think we recently, for one request, released 13,000 pages.
Yeah. So heavy workload that has to be manually reviewed, and certain redactions that are consistent with the government code and our internal policies. It's a lot of labor. So the more we can use technology to our advantage and have access to it, there's a software that says, hey, if we've done a Public Records Act request, we've done all the labor, maybe we put that on the website somehow, and so anybody else can see it instead of asking for it multiple times. So there's some technology we want to utilize. Performance management software. We have evaluations we do for our city employees, but there are some automated systems that can help move that along and allow the employee and the supervisor to check in regularly. So that's not a big ticket item, but just, again, a beneficial thing to be more efficiently managing the employees. The IT master plan, I mentioned that. We'll come back to you and ask for you to help prioritize the 50 to 100 different potential projects. A lot of them are way in the weeds and only IT really understands them. But get your buy-in to those and then fully implement those and what those may cost and roll those out over time. And then an enhanced effort to do more community engagement in Spanish translation. Want to get some direction from you. How far do we want to go? Do we want to just do an occasional flyer, some live translation at community meetings, at council meetings? Do we want to publish the entire agenda in Spanish? Do we want to have somebody available to answer every question in Spanish? So how far do we want to go? So we want to get some direction from you on that. And then that obviously may involve personnel and costs. And please.
Can I ask on that one? So Vice Mayor Rodriguez had asked that we have an interpreter on available. Gosh, it was maybe in 2018, 2019. Do we know how many people that interpreter served during that period of time?
For council meetings?
For the council meetings. And also I understood that we were able to see how many times the Spanish agenda was viewed. So if we can find out how many times the Spanish agenda was reviewed or viewed, and if it was, it determined how many different people looked at it. So, is the same person looking at it all the time? Are we able to look that up? I think we need to do a better job in doing this, but I think we need to be smart about it, and we do need to look at what we've already done and find out, did that work?
Sure.
I mean, if we're not getting anybody who wants to interpreter services, is that because I think we ended it like after 3 months, maybe 4 months.
Just a short pilot program.
Yeah, and so I was always wondering, did we not have anybody take advantage of it, and that's why it stopped?
So can I mention, I think the measurables are important, but I think the outreach that goes along with, he's shaking his head, informing people that that's available. I don't know that was done to the extent that it could have been. And the outreach obviously can't just be on our website, hey, we have an interpreter available. It's got to be a little bit more extensive. If you're going to actually take the measurables and decide if you're going to move this program forward, you've got to give it a fair shot in a way that the outreach is connected to it. So I think there would need to be a little bit more study around how to do that effectively to make sure that
We
people
did
do
more of
have
a
that.
sneak peek and then had the resource available, but the outreach is a whole different comprehensive effort. And it's key to be consistent, right? If we just do it occasionally and not consistently, then when does that member of the public who has that need recognize, are they going to accommodate me tonight or not? So I think that's a great discussion for December 1 to get into all the
Well,
details.
we can talk
of-
about that community champion. How do we bring the community champion in? And then this, and when can we start them concurrently? Because you can't have one without the other.
Correct.
And then let's measure it over 6 months. Are people responding? Are they coming in? Are we getting more engagement? If we're not, then what are we doing something wrong, and go from there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree with what everybody's saying. I think that, the community outreach is what's important, right? I think that really letting the community know that these are things that we have in place, but also, the engagement itself has to be unique and different. It's not the typical, I think Councilmember Meyer had mentioned, is that not just on the website, right? Really, but also strategically identifying different groups and different people that have those relationships and contacts within those communities to let people know that these are services that are now being provided, not only at the council level, in the meetings, but also within our community workshops that we're hosting in the community, right? I think that a lot of people don't attend because historically it wasn't there. And if it was hit and miss, right? So I think, as everybody has said, I think that's very important.
Yeah, we're even looking at maybe when we put out to bid for certain contractors, have that be a requirement that they provide that Spanish translation and all the resources in Spanish to really start moving that effort forward more consistently. So we'll talk about that more on December 1. Any questions about any of these other initiatives, at least superficially questions, because we'll give you a lot more details on December 1. But if these sound like moving in the right direction, then what I'd like to do is stop sharing for a second.
I have a few questions once we're ready
Please.
for that. The first one would be about the conservation and open space element. I do think that, we talked about looking at low-hanging fruit. I'm sure once we have December 1st here, we're going to look at what those costs are and compare the different steps that we can take towards meeting those goals. But I think open space protection does need to be highlighted as a priority, considering what the state has been.
Yeah.
We saw a bill this year that was trying to address dormant golf courses specifically. It didn't pass, but it's something that we really need to, it could come back very easily. So that needs to be something that's a very significant priority, and I think I wanted to mention that. I wanted to mention, too, in looking at the adaptive recreation and programming, some of these questions, again, will be more fleshed out on the first, but the wording here was a little confusing to me because when we originally discussed this agenda item, it was all about the programming being designed for the disabled population instead of the being adaptive to, if you understand what I'm saying.
Programming and adapting it.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to make sure that we're addressing those options in that way, and I'm sure hopefully Bruce knows what I'm talking about. Thank you, Bruce. He's nodding his head. What else? Actually, I'm going to find my notes, track down where I was on this, but someone else can go if they want.
I've got a couple things on Brentwood Boulevard, and it became very, very evident when we were doing the beautification and facade grants, specifically the Central Mart, the old Central Mart shopping center, which is still owned by Central Mart, that the wires going, the telephone poles, or not necessarily telephone, the electricity that's going across on the poles that's all the way down Brentwood Boulevard, except for the new development. We've got the new development near Sand Creek. There is the Clean California local grant for disadvantaged communities and doing infrastructure and cleaning up the areas and if we can underground those, at least maybe from Central to where the what is it? the outlet, the grocery outlet shopping center, where it's already underground at that point. If we can look at maybe doing that and cleaning up Brentwood Boulevard with that Clean California local grant. Because even if, I mean, with the wires the way they are, trying to add in trees and beautify that area in front of that shopping center, it's going to be difficult because those wires come down, and so, you know, you can't plant trees there. They're going to, you know, go into the wires. So how can we, you know, start with that? The other end, as developers come in to, there's a lot of open property down that end, they will be required to do it. But if we can start down here and then work a little bit at a time to beautify Brentwood Boulevard so that it is not the sore spot. So that's one thing.
So if I could just pause there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type these in real time just to make sure that we're capturing these as if we had a whiteboard if we're in a room normally.
Then,
if I may jump in just for a second, I don't believe you've taken public comment yet, and I thought the suggestions were going to come after public comment.
Okay.
Okay. No more questions. I know there's probably going to be more questions later. So there are no other questions for the council. From the council, public comment period is now open.
I received 4 written public comments on this item. A summary is shown on the screen. Full copies of these comments will be made available on the City Council agenda webpage. There were 2 public comments submitted related to adding turf fields for soccer to the strategic plan, and 2 related to an interpretive center for the John Marsh Historic Trust. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. I have 1 hand raised. I'll go ahead and unmute Carolina. Carolina, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say this was a lot of information to try and absorb in one sitting, and I'm hoping that maybe next time we can do this in more digestible chunks. Just from a resident standpoint, I think I'm the only one left on this meeting. It is 10:30, and yeah, this was a lot. I'm also surprised. Didn't the PIO just start not too long ago? Did they leave already? Hoping we can get someone else in. Thank you.
There's no additional hands raised?
If there's...
Can we clarify for the caller what December 1st is? Because I don't think people know that there's another opportunity for them on December 1st.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, sorry.
So normally, historically, we've had 2 full days of strategic plan workshops, but to be sensitive to work schedules, et cetera, tonight was just kind of to lay the foundations of the financial overview, what our current status is on the strategic plans, and give in a transparent manner what we're planning to talk about on December 1st. So December 1st, starting at 8:30 in the morning, again, participating the same way virtually, and we'll be here in the chambers. We'll have the departments present their own initiatives with a lot of details and an engaging discussion with the council and then the public to see that if we want to move forward on those initiatives. And then at that point, we'll spend the next 2 or 3 months doing all the behind-the-scenes work, people, time, and money to pull that off. Come back to you in February before we authorize any initiatives, and then you'll work that into the capital improvement program budget in May and the operating budget in June, and it's effective July 1 where there's funds, people, and time, and move forward on those initiatives over the next 2 years.
Thank you. So
that'll
they
be
can
December 1.
participate then
Yeah.
too.
But no, she's right. It is a lot of information.
Yeah, it's a lot of information.
okay. So,
Really quick, Karen, hold on quick. If there are no other speakers, we will close public comments. Before turning it to the council discussion, I would ask the city manager to explain this next part of our process.
Thank you. So what I think will work best is as you start to share your potential initiatives, give a brief highlight of what it will look like. And then before we move on to the next one, if we can just get a raise of hands or call it, say, yes, I support, we should be talking about that on December 1. If there's an initiative proposed that there's really no interest by anybody else, then let's not waste everybody's time on December 1 talking about it. So I think that'll work well. So after each initiative, so we've got one on the floor, an undergrounding of power lines off Brentwood Boulevard and include probably policies for future development to also be doing that. Is there interest in discussing that on December 1?
Yeah, I have an interest to discuss that.
Perfect. So we'll add that. Okay, number 2.
Okay. Several years ago, I spoke with Casey McCann regarding the Sienna sound wall. As we know, the sound walls are supposed to be built in order to shield homes from development or from the highway and roadways. But for some reason, when the Highway 4 was moved over, it actually built the off-ramp so it's above that sound wall. So it affects those neighbors in that. And we did just have the sound study. So Casey McCann, our former community development director, had said that there was a foam brick type thing that could be put on top of the wall to bring it up to the level of the others without adding the weight and without having to disassemble the wall. Why we allowed the developer, and I mean it's not any of this council's fault, why the council back then allowed for a sound wall along a freeway to go down in a decorative fashion is beyond me. So that was one mistake the city made. The second mistake was that they didn't accommodate that sound wall when that off-ramp went off. And why, our mayor was the chairman of the CCTA at that time. So why wasn't it pushed forward that the sound wall be redone in that area so that the off-ramp was not above that? Because the off-ramp not only is right above where that wall goes down, but it also, it's also right next to the wall. So it's not like it's traveling, 500 feet. It's right next to the wall. So we failed that neighborhood. And I think that if we can use those sound, and actually today I was reading there's also acoustic panels that can be used as well to absorb that sound. The more expensive would be the acrylic panels, but it's a small area, maybe that's something that we could look at because we failed that neighborhood.
So if I captured it sufficiently here, sound wall mitigation measures, and that keeps it broad enough to include anything else. So we'll have the sound study consultant here next Tuesday to give you an update and thorough, very technical report on that sound study. And then that can be some great follow-up for December 1 as well, so we can be prepared for that. Is there interest? Perfect.
Okay. All right. Economic development incentives for well, maybe not just PA1, but because we have Brentwood Boulevard that is going to be, we're trying to attract businesses, commercial businesses down along Brentwood Boulevard. So maybe it's looking at, from that 1 million annual surplus in funds that we have, taking a portion of that towards actually creating something that will attract businesses here above and beyond what we currently have.
So how do you want to title that?
Economic development incentives.
Okay, assume there's interest in that? Yep, perfect.
All right. And the next thing our staff went an entire year without a raise. They said, we understand that there's going to be a problem. And I think even because we're looking at ARPA funds, that maybe we should talk about providing a bonus to our staff, whether it's $500, $1,000, $2,000. That's something that we can discuss in closed session. But I think that they did give in to us, and I think that we should discuss giving them something for that.
And we could use those funds that were pandemic related for that?
ARPA?
Okay.
Yeah. I believe so. Maybe.
We'd have to research some of the restrictions, so there are eligibility requirements. So first, you would have to be providing critical service. You'd have to be interacting with the public. So there's certain positions that may not qualify. This isn't sure everybody in the city can get. So those are the sorts of things we have to look at for December 1st. There's also income eligibility issues where if you make a certain amount above the median income threshold, there's additional reporting requirements. So those are the sorts of things we'd have to vet. So there are pieces to this.
But if we file it all under revenue loss, then it opens up the city to be able to use those funds without meeting those criteria.
I think that's probably true. If you put it under employee compensation and get away from this, a bonus related to the pandemic, we'd probably want to call it something different. But yeah, I think we'd have to work on this, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, is ideas here with fully vetted in December.
Okay, and this one, it doesn't necessarily need to be on this, but
is this a new one?
We need to.
Is there consensus to look at that employee bonus? Okay.
And during our last strategic planning session, we had funding for murals, and not just one mural downtown, but there was supposed to be a mural walk so that we would attract people to come out here. It doesn't have to be under economic development. It could be under the art, because it is art in our town, so it's public art. So why can't we use that art to paint more murals and finish the mural walk, and not necessarily a walk? I mean, they drive to these different places to take their picture and hashtag, this thing, because that mural has been a success. So, that is something that we were supposed to have done, and I don't know how it fell off of it, but that was, I'd like to see that pulled forward from the previous strategic plan.
Sure. And just as a heads up, next week's agenda will have an update from the Arts Commission giving their recommendations for how to spend additional arts, public money, whatever, public art money, what's it called? That's next week, or is that December? That's next week. Next week. So that would be a great time to talk about those murals then as well.
Okay, that's all I have.
And is that, the mural program, is that specific to downtown?
That wasn't necessarily, they were trying to find downtown businesses to do it, but I would envision it farther than that. That'd be cool. Anywhere that you've got a nice building that has some good street frontage that can be seen from would be good for this. And again, it was for tourism, trying to not only have our residents taking pictures there, but to bring people to Brentwood for specifically that. I know I see my kids in Tennessee posting pictures. They're traveling here to go take a picture at this mural. They're going to this mural, and I'm seeing them posting them all over the place, which is something that we had planned during our last strategic planning session, and all of a sudden it just disappeared, and I don't know why it disappeared.
And that would come out of the arts budget?
It was. Okay. It was the economic development, but I never understood why it was economic development, other than it's bringing tourists here to spend money. eating and drinking and shopping and so forth. But I think that's
It
something.
came out of the Economic Development Action Plan, and so that's probably where it came through general fund then at that point. But yeah, the arts has a significant balance, but they've also got lots of projects they're going to pitch to you next week.
Yeah, okay.
Is there consensus on talking about that December 1?
I'm more enthusiastic now that it's beyond just downtown.
Yeah.
But yes.
Exactly.
Perfect.
I have a couple items, if you guys agree. One of them is the Windsor Way Park. I think that one I've been coming to these meetings for years, and it keeps getting pushed off. So we already have a plan, so let's just talk about it. How do we move it forward? Can we do it in phases? And I don't know if this is where you need this, the clarification on the sports complex. Can we get that in phases? Like if we could do sports fields first and then the building at a later date? Because it sounds like from the callers and the emails, there's a need for fields, like ASAP. And then they can walk to the streets and spend money at the streets and bring in more people. And if we get a hotel, they can stay at our hotels and all that good stuff. So,
Okay, so consensus on Windsor Way. That's a long-term current strategic plan initiative, but moving that forward sooner if we can come up with the revenue interest. I see lots of hands. Okay, perfect. And then you said the Sand Creek.
It's already on the list, but I don't think on that, when I saw it, it just wasn't clear, like, can we do things in
21 years.
So phasing it, perhaps? Phasing it for fields?
Yeah. It's been 21 years.
Okay.
21 years, it's been on the list.
Sounds like consensus to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely bring tournaments to our town.
Yeah. In lieu fees, doing away with in lieu fees. Is this where I bring this in? Doing away for in lieu fees for affordable housing. I don't even want to see that again. Let's see.
Hold on. Consensus on in lieu fees? Yes, okay.
Trails. I know that certain parts of our trails are funded by development. But Bruce, are part of our trails have to be funded by the city that are not funded by development? Because I know it's like, I saw the map and it's this fantastic map.
Is this on? Yes, good evening, Council. So yes, there's $6 million of trails that still need to be developed. So it's basically 6 miles, and it's 1 mile per million, basically. So some of that has been identified with development, but a lot of it has not.
Okay.
So we do need additional funding to be able, that's why it's a long-term unfunded project for the rest of our trail plan. So we would need additional funding to complete basically those 6 miles of trails.
Okay, so maybe we can look at the different sections that are not funded by development, and maybe we can start chipping away. Again, not the whole thing, but if we chip away every year a little bit at the trails, we'll be done. But if we keep ignoring it, it's never going to get done. So
yeah, we could prioritize some of those maybe low-hanging fruit for some of our trail.
Yeah, like if we're going to do the vineyards or whatever, like wherever you think would get the best use, or connect two parts that aren't connected, like that would complete that section. I'd be excited about working on trails and getting that done. Let's see.
So expansion of trail connections, is that?
Completion of the trail plan, because it's been in place for a long time. So unfunded, unfunded by developer sections. Like, let's look at the sections, and maybe if we can do 1 or 2 sections, and start chipping away every year, that would be great.
Okay.
Does anyone else? Okay.
Nodding. Okay.
And so the LMC section, I know that we're looking at it for a youth center, but the other need is nonprofits have been reaching out, and they are looking for a hub for nonprofits. So I want to look at it also for the youth center, but also if it were a hub for nonprofits. Could it then fund itself if they were able to pay, a rent for a location? Speaking to county people, East Contra Costa has a real big need for services on this side of the county, and Brentwood residents have a need. I mean, we already have the Brentwood clinic there, the county clinic, so just expanding that to other services that would be helpful for the community would be great. So, and I think it's, it's already kind of offices in a certain way.
Correct.
So that wouldn't take a lot of investment from a structural perspective. So I want to look at that option as well. And I think...
And you'll see in the report coming out tomorrow, there's a conceptual showing more nonprofits or less for balancing out some of the facilities. So some of that's going to be underway. So
that's awesome.
Happening
Okay,
sooner than otherwise.
Yeah.
consensus on looking at nonprofit hub at that
Well,
facility?
and maybe not just there. I mean, we have a second floor in the community center that has all kinds of office space in there. What are the chances of utilizing some of that for nonprofit?
Yeah, so let's look at both locations and see what works out best.
I think we could utilize the community center a lot better. I mean, I think like Councilmember Rary has mentioned in regards to our nonprofits, I think that center, the community center has never been used at its capacity in regards to being a community center. So I think that, you know, both areas are good to look at, but I think that obviously we have a community center is not being used, especially like they said on the second floor. That'd be great.
My concern about that is you've mentioned before that people don't like coming downtown. So, I mean, if we could service them where they live, I think you've said that before, that would be great too. It's just to look at. It's nothing concrete. It's just an option.
Okay, did I capture that accurately?
Yeah, I'd just like to say something since I guess I said that before, is that I don't think that people are not comfortable. I think it's not their fault. I think it's us as a city to make it comfortable. I think that if people would come to downtown and want to utilize the services if we did a better job in connecting with those portions of our community. So I think it's not the location itself. I think it's the strategy around the city being a little bit better in regards to engaging those communities to come out to the downtown.
Great. Any other potential initiatives that haven't been flagged yet?
I wanted to mention, this is something I think we talked about, but I didn't see on the list, is revising and updating the website. We talked about making it a lot more user-friendly and a lot more transparent and easy to navigate, and I know that's a big investment. But
on what we're doing now.
Yeah, so there is an update in progress right now for the website. It's expected to launch right around the end of the calendar year. So that's in process, and you should see significant improvement within the next couple of months.
Fantastic. The other thing I wanted to bring up, I had a weekend away in Petaluma, and their downtown area has a lot of historic buildings and touristy kinds of attractions like tours and things like that. But one of the things they did for economic development, and I thought it was really great, is they have a QR code program where buildings could opt in, and there was a sticker on the window, and you click on that and you can read, go to the website where it talks about the history of that building or unique event that happened at that site. I like the idea of doing that downtown, but I do think it could go beyond that. For example, if we did art murals, you could have a QR code somewhere that gave the history of that artist, for example. I think it's one of those, like we were talking about, going somewhere with a specific hashtag, better in Brentwood, whatever. I think economically speaking, it drives a little more interest. And if you're somewhere where you see it, you might be more inclined, knowing it's a citywide thing, you might be hearing an interesting story. I think there's something to look into with that. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Interest in moving forward on?
Oh, yeah.
Did I title it close to?
Not just historical, because I think we don't have quite as many historic buildings as some of the other towns do, but we do have some buildings that have interesting history, or we have, like
Sweeney's has burned down so many times.
And it's haunted.
Yeah.
Jimmy.
So I think there's more to it than just historical. Yeah, exactly. That'll work.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm running out of room.
The wine trolley, I know I wasn't here when that happened, but I thought it was a really cool idea. No drinking and driving, which I'm a big proponent of. So, is that something that happens every year, or do I have to bring that up now? I don't know.
So it hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
And what happens is it was going to be a pilot program for the Ag Enterprise Funds. And so we are going to do it on a weekend for the Contra Costa Wine Growers Association's tour, or their wine tasting event. And so we're going to do it here as a pilot program. And the intention was, if it went well, to look at ways of funding it. We originally started off as a farm, a downtown to the UPICs, but found that that's going to be problematic with the traffic that's out there, and they'll be stuck in the traffic just as much as those in the traffic. So that's why it went to the wine tour. So it is something that can be pulled forward from the previous strategic plan, and if it goes well, to look at something that we might do on weekends.
And it was shelved just because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, it was shelved just because of the pandemic, and I mean the funding opportunity could be, you know, getting. I mean, some of the things we talked about is getting realtors, or you know, to buy ads on the side of the trolleys, and so to help fund it that way, and then maybe do for different. Have it so that people can purchase it as an event and go out there and do it as an event and not just, so yeah.
Or how about what we saw in Sacramento where they're pedaling?
Yeah, well, that's a little different.
I was going to mention, it's kind of similar to what you're talking about. I know our staffing capacity is not great, and our PIO is not here anymore, but I do love the idea of finding ways to tie in, like the UPIC and the wine, and like, you know, if you buy this here, you can have a coupon for a free appetizer there, that kind of thing. And do we have time and staff time to invest in something like that? Can that be a dedicated thing? I feel like there's so many opportunities for.
We do it.
But there's nothing coming from it, though.
There's a committee, and staff support to the council members that are on it, so we can probably come back with a comprehensive update to the council at some point.
Okay, good.
Give an update. Yeah.
Thanks.
Who's on the committee?
The Mayor Bryant and Councilor Rary.
No, it's Vice Mayor Rodriguez now and
My
myself.
But I think it's also a matter of like just. It's a matter of like dedicating the time and effort to it to make sure it's successful. I think there's so many opportunities for once people are in town for one thing to keep them for something else, and so this cross promotion and this campaign that's more citywide, and I guess that's where that would come from. But I'm just thinking maybe we could invest a little bit more into it.
Who calls the meetings for that? Could you two call a meeting and say you want to talk about economic development for ag?
So Karen has a lot more experience in that committee. I've been to one meeting since I got elected into that. Well, selected to be.
We actually have a working group with the farmers that meets monthly, except during a couple of months when it's their high season. So we pull from them the ideas that they want. One of the things that we were going to do, and that got put on hold, and it is part of the past strategic plan, was a farm to fork, and trying to get restaurants here in town to utilize the fresh produce grown here locally. And the farmers were going to work with a local restaurateur to cook a meal so they can see what it's all about, and invite the restaurants to come in, you know, kind of like a little convention type thing where they can come in and stop at the different booths to see what type of produce and so forth it was on, and then be able to taste the food and to see the differences there. And so that was something we were planning on doing before COVID hit. So I would like to see that brought forward as well. The funding has already been in there for that from the previous, as you saw, there was, you know, probably about $200,000 that hadn't been spent. But the wine trolley, the farm to fork, because, you know, if we can make Brentwood in the middle of the ag area into a farm to fork city,
well,
town.
Especially when you have people like, I mean, Chrissy Teigen talks about Brentwood, California. So like we should be leveraging that, right? It's like, it has so much potential. So I think anything we can do to support our ag tourism would be great.
Yeah, Atravisiamo's owners are part of our working group, and so they were going to be the restaurant that was going to cook it all up for us, and that, as I said, that kind of got put on hold, and hopefully we'll be able to resurrect it and move forward, and in time even do, you know, a 100-person table in City Park or something where people could come in and have a farm to fork meal in the park, and use our kitchen, you know, our whatever the.
So I don't know how to put that in our plan. I mean, do we have to put something new, like agricultural?
It's already funded, right? If that's,
We
that was, I was asking
could
what that
move it
sounds like
forward.
Yeah, but something about ag, you know, I just don't know how to put that in.
And I don't know if there's a way to tie this in, but we talked a little bit about Better in Brentwood coming back and becoming stronger. And I think, I don't know if there's already the plan to invest a little bit more staff time and effort and money into video production, for example, and beefing up websites or web pages for that. Is that already in the plans? Because that could be tied in with this as well.
Now that we're working with Weblative to supplement our PIO efforts, they're starting to do more video production. In fact, they just released a video for the Redistricting Commission, and it was fairly well done. So looking to do more of that as soon as we have a little more capacity. Absolutely.
Okay.
So
and then,
did you want to put an ag tourism one down? Because we have, maybe we need to give you guys an update on what we're doing, and then that would give you some better sense of all the things that are happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last one I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is a strategic plan or just a suggestion, but I know it would involve staff investment of time. I'd like to look at doing an annual community service day citywide. So really the investment would be all in all the planning of it, but I think it could be something that citywide would be a great way to engage community members in giving back.
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe Martin Luther King Day, which is
something like that. Yeah. If that date works, yes, but if whatever date, and do it on an annual.
Yeah, and when I previously worked in the Central Valley, they had Love Modesto or Love Manteco days, and it was a whole community service day and brought everybody out. So Love Brentwood, would love to do that. Yeah. Consensus, sounds like there's a lot of nodding. Okay. Anything else you'd like to just chat about on December 1 and see what fits? Okay, if we've captured it all, and again, as I said, we can discuss if there's anything else you think of on December 1, we can certainly talk about it then as well. So thank you, this is very helpful, and we'll be prepared as best we can for December 1 and give you more details as much as we have and get some priorities set and see how we want to spend those funds. So thank you very much. And I don't need another motion, I got enough direction, so I think we're ready to adjourn.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I got first, second, third. Sorry about that, Daniel. Okay, we only got a first and second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All those that are not? No. Okay.